study session of Independent School District 535 School Board is called to order at 4:01 p.m. on Tuesday, January 21st, 2020, in room 137 of the Edison Building and elsewhere. Present is Mr. Michael Munoz, Superintendent of Schools, and a non-voting ex officio member of the board. Also present is Ms. Wendy Edgar, the Assistant Board Clerk. Ms. Edgar, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Amundson.
Here.
Mr. Barlow. Mr. Barlow. Miss Marvin.
Here.
Nathan.
Here.
Mr. Schlusner.
Here.
Linger.
Here.
Ms. Workman. Ms. Workman.
Here. I think you called my name. It's hard to hear.
Mr. Barlow. One more time, Mr. Barlow. Thank you.
Okay. 2.01, approval of the agenda. Superintendent?
There are no changes to the agenda.
Move approval, Marvin.
Second, Workman.
Ms. Edgar?
Ms. Amundson.
Aye.
Mr. Barlow. Ms. Marvin.
Aye.
Ms. Nathan.
Aye.
Mr. Schlusner.
Aye.
Chair Seelinger.
Aye.
Ms. Workman.
Aye.
Mr. Barlow.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 5.01, equity. Superintendent, this is your item. If you want to set the stage for us before you jump in, that's fine, or I can do that as well in terms of what you're going to present to us and what you're sort of looking for.
Yes, just want to give the board an update. Just a reminder for those who may be joining the meeting outside of the board. The board allocated additional almost $200,000 to be added to this coming school year's budget. So tonight this afternoon, we're here to give the board an update on where we're at on that. So at this time, I'm going to share my screen. So hopefully you can all see my screen. Yes?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. So just wanted the first section here, these are the different individuals or groups that we sought feedback from, our equity specialists, our American Indian Liaison, the Employees of Color Resource Group, bilinguals, and other employees of color. We met with a group of students from of color, the individuals that have been doing the organizing the protest in our community, and our coordinator of equity. So those are the different individuals or groups that we did have a conversation with. The common themes that we saw across all the groups was that their recommended representation in the curriculum and anti-racist curriculum should be something that we need to focus on. They also talked about direct support for students and families. There was some recommendation to add additional equity specialists to provide that direct support to students and families of color. Recruitment and retainment of staff of color was a common theme. Cabinet position was a common theme, and then professional development in cultural competency and anti-racism was another common theme we heard, and discipline achievement data, someone to focus on this was the last one. So I would say it's pretty consistent across all the different groups in these different areas. Different groups had them prioritized a little bit differently. So when we looked at our plan to use the additional equity funding. We also realized in order to try to address all the themes that we were going to have to take a multi-year approach. So what you're seeing here, the first one, year one for the 2021 school year, we are going to have the current coordinator of equity have a strict focus on district professional development, student voice, and development of our equity teacher leaders. We want to add another coordinator of equity, which we would have that individual focus on curriculum and human resources. Also, we want to add an additional equity specialist with that person focusing on gap areas, specifically with our Hispanic students or LGBTQ group and ability students or students in special ed. And then we want to take that year also planning the recruitment of a cabinet level position for the following year. We also want to explore ways to provide loans for tuition for our para-to-teacher program. You know, one of the things that we're realizing is that we aren't getting as many of our paras of color in that program, and we believe that you know, we've made changes in the para contract, allowing them to get paid during their student teaching time. We've worked with Winona State University to provide classes in the evenings or weekends, but we realize that there's also a financial barrier to cover the tuition costs for that. So we want to explore options to try to address that in year one. So year two for the 21-22 school year, we are looking at adding an associate superintendent of equity and accountability or opportunity. This would be a cabinet level position. And then we also want to add an anti-racist curriculum specialist year two. And then year three, we want to add an additional coordinator of equity and have that individual focus on the opportunity gap and discipline disparities. And then the other thing we want to do is add, we're calling them community liaisons with families of color, focusing first on our Somali families and Latino families. For those board members who attended that training, we went up in the cities. Minneapolis public schools had parents who held focus groups in the different cultures that they have within their district, and then they reported that information back to the district. So we would have, we're thinking about trying to start with just 2 different cultural groups, and then eventually expand to many other cultural groups that we have across our district. But starting off with just two of those positions, and then with the hope of expanding those in future years. So this is, we believe that we want to honor all of the feedback that we receive, but understanding that when you have just under $200,000, you cannot do all of it at once. So we looked at a 3-year plan to try to address all of the areas that we heard during with our conversations with the different groups that I mentioned earlier.
Great. Thank you, Superintendent. We decided to bring this forward to the board. Haven't seen this plan before, but kind of give board members a sort of taste of what the work has been done and the recommendation the district is working towards. For the good of the viewing public, you know, the board really kind of says the what, and the district takes care of the how. And so I really appreciate Superintendent and others who've reached out to the other individuals and groups getting feedback. I think that's really important. I really appreciate also the working on building on the work that we've already done, Mike, especially in terms of having our coordinator of equity, I think is great. And also, you know, identifying those challenges you've certainly seen, you know, we've discussed in numerous places, recruiting staff of color and the barriers they face in getting teacher training or things like that. So just looking for some initial comments from board members, and it looks like we have several hands up. I think I will go Julie, Jean, and Kathy. Unmute Julie, go ahead.
I don't know why my hand is up. It's not.
Okay, Jean?
It says raise your hand, but so I assume it's down.
Yeah, thank you. Three things. First of all, I understand this is just a draft at this point, and this may or may not be the final decision. But Mike, I'm wondering if we could get a copy, if you could post a copy of this. I think that there are a lot of really good ideas on there, and I'm just wondering if we could get a copy of the document that you have there. Secondly, question, where are English as a second language students, who would be sort of the expert or the administrator who gives that group a voice in this plan?
Well, we would see it falling under here, the ability. I just mentioned special ed, but I would also put EL in that category as well. And then we do have a district person already that I guess leads our EL program, but this would be an equity specialist that would be one of the groups that they would focus on as well.
Okay, and so my assumption is that as this thing is rolled out and grows, that they could sort of determine what kind of personnel, how much time and focus and the kind of people that need to be working in each of these areas. I mean, that this is going to be sort of a plan that would continue to evolve, I'm assuming. And then my last question is whether it's exactly this plan or something that's slightly different, are you going to run this by some of the same groups that you initially talked with in terms of getting their feedback about these ideas?
I guess we weren't planning to get additional feedback that we were going to share with them. I guess we would ask them if we don't want them to say, no, I think you should move this one to year 2, year 1, but we would ask them, did we capture the feedback? I mean, obviously we didn't capture all of it in year 1, but our goal was to, within a 3-year time period, to try to capture everything that we heard with the various groups.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, board members. I'm now on got the right thing up so I can see hands. So I'm going to go Kathy, and then I see, looks like Mr. Barlow has joined us. I know there's a few other hands past that. Go ahead, Kathy.
Deborah, would you mind if I defer to Melissa, because I think her hand was up very first?
I don't mind. Go ahead, Melissa.
That's very nice of you, Director Nathan. So I see a 3-year plan. I think this is a wonderful enhancement that came from just the initial recommendation to add the cabinet level position, and this is beyond, you know, my wildest dreams, sort of. I'm wondering though, knowing that we are going into a period of budget reductions, I understand having it over 3 years because it would be a lot to add to the budget at once, but it seems to me that all of these things could be useful right away. And either way, we're going to have, you know, some money issues, but should the board decide that this is one of our priorities, would there be any barriers to accelerating and not spreading it over 3 years? I don't know if I'm making myself clear.
I understand.
I didn't have time to think about it because we hadn't seen this before the meeting, but I would love to see year 3 accelerated.
Okay. Yeah, I just, we didn't total cost this out, you know, the total 3 years. That's something we'd have to do, but I'd be a little hesitant to add even more to the budget that was already approved. And some of these, we are hoping that we may be able to look at some current positions and maybe restructuring to capture some of these new positions as well. It's not strictly all going to be new money.
And would we be able to look into any grant opportunities to fund some of these areas?
Yeah, I mean, we can look for that. I don't, my experience has been that a lot of the federal funds that are available for things like this, for example, In my previous district, we were able to get a really nice federal grant to do their version of our pair-to-teacher program, where they paid tuition for every year that we paid the tuition of pairs in that district, they had to commit to work for a year in the district or have to repay that. So unfortunately, a lot of the federal grants, usually you have to be at 50% or higher for any reduced population in order to qualify for those. But we can look to see if there's anything out there that we may be eligible for.
Thanks, Melissa. And just to summarize Melissa's points, just information on budgeting, I think is not a bad idea, even though it's going to be ballpark. And I know that's asking a lot from especially John. And then thinking about how this might work going forward in terms of setting priorities for the budget. But I'm just reiterating what I've heard. I'm not making any direction. We're going to go to Kathy and then Dawn.
So first of all, Mike, thank you for this, and thank you for your in-depth conversations with the various communities that have given us their voices, but doing it in an intentional way. You know, when I first spoke about this, I was talking about a road trip scenario where I was looking for a roadmap and I was looking for someone to steer and for someone to put their foot on the gas. And you've given us that and traveling companions. So I think that I'm really pleased to see the components that are represented here, because I think it sends a message to our community, and it gives us a good way to structure our work around identifiable people. The one question I have on the Associate Superintendent of Equity and Accountability Opportunity is that you've identified areas of focus for the additional coordinators of equity and the equity specialists. Do you have a sense of the area of focus aside from the job title of that associate superintendent?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, I don't want to say that that title may change slightly. I don't want to say it's carved in stone and that's exactly what it's going to be. But obviously, our plan is that individual would supervise all of the coordinators of equity, and also we've had conversations about possibly moving the equity specialist under that individual as well. But we see this individual overseeing all of the work that's on this slide. So we have that one individual at the cabinet level that's focusing primarily on equity.
And do you anticipate anything moving from where it's housed now to also fall under this job description?
I'm not for sure. When you say housed now, I'm not sure.
Maybe if it's another cabinet member's responsibility or in another department.
Yes. Yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to. I didn't do a very good job of explaining then that right now we have a cabinet member supervising the one coordinator of equity, and our initial conversations, then the new one that we add for this coming school year would also be under that supervision just for 1 year until we can have the associate superintendent brought on board, and then that individual would take over supervision of those positions, and then the other new ones that would be added in year 2 and year 3.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Director Barlow. Hello.
Hello, and thank you. And here.
Happy you're here.
I did have a question regarding the student voice, which I had opportunity along with to my fellow board members to hear. And I'm sure Superintendent Munoz, the curriculum emphasis, and I'm glad to see that for year 2, there is space for the development of a position, anti-racist curriculum specialist. My question then is, will there be any work done in the area of curriculum prior to the establishment of the position?
Yeah, if you up in year one where it says add a coordinator of equity, and their areas of focus will be curriculum and human resources. So they'll start that work, and then when we bring the second position on in year two, they'll have an individual that's just focusing on curriculum, whereas the coordinator is doing curriculum and HR.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Don. I'm sorry, folks. I don't know who came first, so avoid. Mark, then Julie, then Kathy. Looks like. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. This is a really nice start, and I've got a few questions here. Is one of the things that I think would be very helpful for our community is, well, we know the district is doing a lot of work in this area. Maybe it's out there, but I've personally got a hard time finding it on our website. And this should be more prominent on our virtual face to our community than it currently is. Again, it may be there, but it's hard to find. I guess that's more of a comment. Some of the other things like the community liaisons, which is a great start. Perhaps there's a chance for collaboration with the city of Rochester or even Olmsted County to help fund something like this. At the end of the day, this is a community thing that should be worked on together, and I think looking outside our own walls may be beneficial to our entire community as well. And the last thing is, from a budgetary point of view, is when we have our classic annual budget discussions, it'd be nice to start to see all of the dollars being spent on equity in this space to actually be broken out or at least highlighted in itself. So again, we can see, it's like Melissa said, if we decide as a board that we want to put a financial focus on this, it's a little easier for us to see what the total dollars being focused on this are, if adjustments need to be made, because as we all know, over the next couple of years, there's adjustments that are going to have to be made.
Yeah, I would say, I think if you remember, John did add Yep.
That was a great slide, but again,
yeah.
Unless I go digging through board docs, I don't know where it is, and it'd be awesome for the community to be able to see that as well.
Okay, got it.
So we've heard Mark. We've heard Mark make a recommendation on if we're going to prioritize some equity work, that perhaps there's a more prominent place on the website where things could go together. Community liaisons. Mark, just for your information, Superintendent, Kathy, Julie, Melissa, and I saw the presentation by the Minneapolis School District, where they used, as Mike said, community members who were offered a stipend to kind of work in their community, getting some particular feedback. We all really responded to that format. And also, I know kind of on the other side, and Kathy can maybe speak to this, there's been some conversations about Cradle to Career maybe being part of some of that funding if it's stipend based for some community work. So I think, again, I'm loving the themes of what I would say are collaboration within our community, collaboration within our district. So thanks for your comments, Mark.
Great, thanks for the info.
Yep. I think Julie and then Kathy.
I have two questions. So the first one is this Associate Superintendent of Equity and Accountability / Opportunity. It sounds to me like that person would have to have a superintendent's license in order to hold that title. And if that is the case, are we limiting ourselves as to who we might hire for that position? And my second, okay, go ahead.
Yes, you are correct. Any title that has superintendent, you do have to have a superintendent license. Not for sure how to answer it does limit, if you don't have a superintendent license, then I guess you wouldn't be eligible. We could potentially consider somebody who's working on their superintendent license. I don't think legally we can have that title called superintendent if you don't have your license. That's something I'd have to check into. I don't know if working towards one would qualify or not.
I realize I'm going a little bit deep into the weeds here, and I'm not asking you to define exactly what the position would entail specifically, but would it be necessary for that person to have a superintendent's license in order to do that work well? I guess that's kind of where I'm going with that.
No, I guess I don't know if it would have to have a superintendent license. Would say it would be very important that they have some really good district level leadership experience. I think also having it be a associate superintendent or assistant superintendent. I know there was concern by the board that the desire to send a message to the community that you want a cabinet level position. This is the next in charge cabinet level position in the district. So I think it sends even a stronger message to the community that the person second in charge of the district is overseeing the equity work of your district.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And then my second question is, how often do we have curriculum review? What's the length of the cycle for curriculum review? Do you know about how many years?
I'll have to have Brenda jump in and answer that question, but we don't see this having to wait on a certain cycle. I mean, I think it can be done when we do that cycle, but I think these individuals are going to be working on it in all content areas every year, not just saying, well, this is the year, for example, of math, so we're going to focus on that. I think they can work with when we get those 80 to 90 to 100 teachers together to do that, these individuals can work with that group, but also they could be looking at other content areas besides just the one that happens to be, on cycle this year.
Okay, that was my concern. I don't want the public to think that, well, if it's, if we review, I'm making up a number here, if we review the math curriculum or the English curriculum every 5 years and we just finished reviewing it, then we really have to wait another 5 years to look at it for these racial inequities. So I appreciate knowing, and I'm sure the public, whoever's tuned in, would also appreciate knowing that this is something that is immediate and it's intentional, and we don't have to wait in order to act. So thank you, Mike.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example. If you remember a few board meetings ago, we came to you and said that we wanted to add phonics to the reading curriculum, and that wasn't on cycle. But as we look at what we've been doing and programming and stuff that we've been using has not got us the outcomes that we wanted, we need to make adjustments. So, we can, it doesn't have to always be on cycle in order for us to look at making changes to that particular content area.
Okay, I appreciate that example that you just gave as well. Thank you. I'm through.
Thanks, Julie. Wendy's keeping track of the hands for me. It looks like Kathy is next.
Great, thank you. I'm sorry if I missed this, but I know that recruiting teachers of color has been a priority and is already part of our achievement and integration plan. But it's primarily been the responsibility of human resources. Is that still the plan, or is this a joint effort with any of these positions?
Yes, the coordinator of equity would work with HR on the recruitment and attainment of staff of color. They wouldn't do it by themselves. They would work in conjunction with the HR department.
Okay, great. And another HR question, and I don't know if this is a legal question or a practice question, but what are our capacities to identify candidates of color are preferred for any of these positions?
I know for sure legally you can't post a position, say I'm only candidates of color can apply. that would land yourself up in court rather quickly. But we'd have to look and work with legal on what we can do specifically. You know, just the same thing when we started the Parent Teacher program, even though the intent of the program was to get more pairs of color into the teaching field, working with legal, they said you can't just exclude or have that type of program just for pairs of color. It had to be open to all pairs.
Okay. And the position of an anti-racist curriculum specialist, that seems sort of specialized. Do we have a notion about, is that an up and coming classification? Is there a certain background that we think there's a pool of people out there for that?
I don't think there's any specific certification or anything like that, you know, I can go to college and get that type of degree or whatever, but basically we're saying we want an individual that has some experience in that area that could lead that work. I don't think there would be any specific certification that that individual would have, but we do think that they would have maybe training in certain areas. For example, Winona State University is offering a program that helps in the area of equity, and you know, so I think somebody that has either experience doing this work already or has specific training that we can tie to that work.
Okay. And one more, you know that one of my commonly commented on components of our equity work is data and evaluation of our efforts. And I just want to confirm that data collection and evaluating our outcomes and performance would be part of that associate superintendent's role?
Yes, but I think, as I think, actually you might have been the one that brought it up at the last meeting, I think the board needs to decide what measurements are they going to use to determine how effective our equity work is. So once that's established by the board, that individual would have that to understand that's how his or her work is going to be measured. But I think that's something the board's going to have to really, you know, is it strictly going to be the achievement gap and discipline disparities, or is it going to be additional data points? So that's something that we would ask the board to come to consensus on, which would be very helpful for us.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Melissa, and then Mark.
Thank you. I thought that Director Workman brought up a really good point about needing a superintendent's license, and I'm feeling conflicted about the importance of making sure that we have a very strong applicant pool versus being able to post the position as a associate superintendent position. So I was just wondering, is it the type of thing that would be, if we didn't get a good applicant pool, that it could be reposted, or if it's better to do it the other way around to make sure that the applicant pool is as wide as possible? Because quite frankly, part of the whole issue that we're trying to address is systemic racism and lack of equal opportunity types of issues. And so it would be logical to think that there are some great candidates out there who have not yet had the opportunity to progress to the point of possessing a superintendent's license.
That's true, but there are a lot, when you look across the country, there's a lot of districts looking for these exact types of positions at associate or assistant superintendent level. So there are individuals out there, but that's something that if you run through the process and you're not happy with the candidates that you've interviewed and gone through the process, you can readjust and repost. So we've actually done that in other areas in the past, but I really believe there's a lot of good candidates out there that, and we looked at several current postings across the country that are looking for very similar type positions and looked at their job descriptions, and also in the state of Minnesota looked at their cabinet level positions and their job descriptions that they have for different positions. So that's what we use to make that determination. And as I said earlier, I think as it seemed like it was important to send to the community that we have a top level cabinet position focusing specifically on that work. And as I said earlier, this would be a second in charge type of position that's focusing on the district's equity work.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Looks like we have Mark, then Jean.
Building a little bit on what Julia was saying earlier in the area of the anti-racist curriculum, is having helped on curriculum committees in the past from a public member point of view, is, I think this is a good place where the community does a great job of helping us understand the areas that we need to change. We know we sometimes have difficulties getting community members to actually participate on our committees to give direct input at the time of need. So kind of back on my original point of, if we had a more visible place in this space as well, i.e. we need people to help us from a community member point of view, I think that would be great. And a bit of attention on that is perhaps there's an opportunity for our student school board members there as well.
No, I agree, Mark, and I think we need to go back to those individuals who have reached out to either me or the board and say, we heard you. Now it's time for you to roll up your sleeves and partner with us and help us do this work.
Completely agree.
Thank you, Mark. Jean?
Yes. First of all, I deeply respect, Mike, the process that you've gone through to come up with this plan. I think it's so important, it's so powerful, it's so timely. And I would simply echo what Melissa said, that as important as superintendent's licensure is, I would much rather, my understanding is that once the plan is finalized, it's going to come to the board for approval, and I would bring it up at that point. But I would much rather change the title of that position of associate superintendent to something else, so that we don't eliminate really good candidates who may not have that licensure. I know that's going to be a discussion for down the road, but I think that's really important that we have a broad net for people who are qualified for the position, even if they don't have the licensure. Thank you.
Yeah, I hear you. I guess our plan was not to bring it back for formal approval, based on a conversation we had at other board meetings. It was more to bring it here, and if we saw some consensus on a major red flag, then we would go back as a cabinet level and revisit either our plan or a specific position. So if there's consensus at the board that they would not prefer that it be an associate or assistant superintendent position, we can revisit that. I will tell you something that I would find a lot of difficulty breaking away from, is that you need to have, an individual is going to have some really good district level leadership experience in order to be a cabinet level position, or at least some extensive building level leadership in order to do the work as a cabinet member.
If this were to be a Department of Equity, could the person who was the head of that department still have the kind of administrative authority? Maybe not the same level as cabinet, but would they still be able to administer or help make decisions about budget and personnel and that type of thing as cabinet members do? My main concern is that we've got a lot of people who just haven't had the opportunity to get a superintendent's license, but who do have the experience and do have the education, not the licensure necessarily, to do a great job. And I just want to make sure that we're not making it difficult for really qualified people to either rise in our district or come to our district and have that kind of position.
So I'm going to step in, folks. We've been discussing this for about 40 minutes, and I'm not going to cut us off, but I'm just kind of giving everybody a time frame. The way I have looked at this is that this is a plan, and that this plan is in development. I think Superintendent has certainly heard from some board members about concerns about the title of a position and possible credentials to that position. The reason that I respond positively to the 3-year plan is that this gives the administration an opportunity to kind of do some research, look at what other job descriptions are out there in the state and across the nation, see what resonates with our district, see what works for our district, and then have some flexibility. I'm all about some flexibility, and I certainly am not looking at this plan, and this is my opinion, that as this is chiseled in stone and that this is what's going to happen in year 2, but that we have some time to reflect and make good decisions for us. Again, I'm not stopping discussion, just kind of putting a little comma right here. So if it's a superintendent, if you want to respond to that, otherwise I'd like to go on to, it looks like we have 3 more folks with hands raised at the moment.
Yeah, I don't have much more to say than what I've already said.
Great, thank you. Don and Kathy and Julie.
Thank you. Certainly, I don't want to state what's already been commented on. I will, however, respond to, I suppose, my initial reaction to the use of the term good applicant pool, not your word, Superintendent, fellow board member. I just think it's important that words matter. Intent matters as well. My point, however, is this, that there are, anyone who would apply more than likely would be someone who's qualified. The issue is potentially, do they possess the requisite licensure? And then final observation is, the superintendent said, well, if there's consensus, if the board, we as a board, if we're not caught up in the title, assistant superintendent, and we are willing to land for cabinet member, he's not opposed to that. And I guess it's just important that we say what we mean, and as we say, mean what we say. So that's all I wanted to share, just as a point of observation and reflection. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Kathy, Julie?
I just want to be clear on the timing and the budget. So when I look at the year 1 recommendations, are those able, except for the loans for tuition, because I know we need to explore that, but are the additional positions able to be added to the budget with the additional amount that we authorized to add to the budget?
Yes.
Okay. And then we would just have, for future years, that would be something we'd cost out and consider as part of the annual budget process.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Board members, just an interjection here too. One of the reasons we didn't want to wait to bring this to the next board meeting, and we thought we'd take this opportunity, was because if this plan looked good, and as Mike said, no big red flags, that they could start working on posting those jobs right away instead of waiting until the 4th. So that was a great question, Kathy. Thank you for that. Julie.
Okay, I think for me, the most important, or one of the important things is just to keep us apprised of changes. I mean, major changes that are happening. And I think, Mike, you said you were already planning on doing so. Will this come, so this was initiated by a school board member. So the fact that we said that we're appropriating monies for this position or for you to outline it, then I'm just wondering if my fellow board members feel that we don't need to take a separate vote on it at some point. And I'd really like to know something, because sometimes we leave these discussions and somebody has said, well, I think that blah, 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 whatever it is, and then we never get back to it and we don't know what's, where it's been left. So I don't know if now is the appropriate time to do that, or if that should go on a future agenda item. So just throwing that out there.
Julie, I'm not sure I understand you. Can you say more about that, please?
Which part?
Something about a vote. I guess I wasn't quite sure where.
Oh, okay. Okay. I think somebody earlier had asked us if we needed to vote on this. If it needed to be, if this needed to have an official vote. The initial one didn't have an initial vote. It was a consensus. Okay. And I said, in as much as this was at the recommendation of a school board member initially, should that be followed up with a vote? And then the second piece was just not leaving loose ends hanging when we've had these discussions. Somebody will say something like, well, I think that's a good idea, and then it drifts away, never to be seen again. So
yeah,
two things.
I'll comment on that. One, I think we finally landed after the discussion about whose role is it to determine personnel. The vote that was taken by the board was to allocate additional funding towards equity, not towards certain positions, but to allocate a dollar amount to be added to this coming school year's budget to work on equity.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure everybody was on the same page with that, that's all.
Thank you, Julie. Anything else, board members? Okay, great. Thank you so much, Superintendent. Excited about this work, excited to move forward. Great. Okay, 7.01, community engagement. Give me a minute to juggle some things. Wendy has offered to run my PowerPoint for me, so I don't have to figure that out. One thing at a time. I'm already figuring out hands and. Okay, you ready, Wendy, to share your screen? Great. Okay, so I put this on the agenda a while ago. Most of you will know that community engagement is a passion of mine, and I thought this is a really great time to sort of dig in and think about how we can have a mutual understanding and build a system on best practices and kind of solidify some procedures and protocols. So I did, this did go out late today, apologies for that, but sometimes that's how it goes. So here is what we will be focusing on today. I'm gonna need a sign. So our objectives today are to discuss why it's important to engage with the community, explore best practices on how to engage, and then create a shared understanding of procedures and protocols for engagement. So put a ring on it. The reason I titled this is, Kathy and I have worked on a family engagement program for a number of years, and we had a student, I think she was a Somali student one year, come to our class, and she said, my friends are wondering why I'm coming to this class because it's about engagement and I'm already married. So I kind of ran with the wedding theme, and if you were all here in person, you would smile and chuckle and at least laugh at my dorky joke. So I called it Put a Ring on It. So why do we need to talk about engagement and what is it? So when we think about engagement, we know it's continuous, it's goal-focused. We're seeking some feedback. Owner, not customer focused, which we'll get into in a little bit. It's building relationships, culturally responsive, and supports what's best for children and families, individually and collectively, and weigh choices and trade-offs. Successful practice does not give special interests a chance to take over critical conversations. We are the quarterback. We keep the ball to move forward. If we're stuck on defense, we will be reacting to conversations we neither start or contribute in a meaningful way. When we only seek input for decisions, we do a disservice to our community. And I think most importantly, when I think about community engagement, I think this is really hard work. So I hope that that of everything that comes out of this, we realize that this is not something that we should take lightly. Any comments on that? I guess I'm going to go screen by screen. This is for discussion purposes. I'm not here to, give a lecture. So please be interactive as possible. Sorry, I had to go out. Okay, go ahead, Wendy. Okay, so what do our vows include? We know that our community they want legitimacy, they want to be heard and valued, they want some tangible changes, but I think when we do community engagement, we want things too. We want respect about their knowledge, we want the benefit of the doubt, and we want people to know how difficult decision-making can be. I think this is sort of we've talked about this before, that we are the ones who tell people what our job entails. And so, this is hard work, and we don't take any decision lightly, especially when we're making a decision for 7. Okay. So why are we doing this? Many reasons, of course. I call it the age of input. Everyone has a story, an opinion, and a device. So we are kind of bombarded with opinions, pieces of information, rumor, innuendo, you name it. We're doing this to help our district work through conflicting views, identify options, and create supportive atmosphere and understanding of decisions. Our role is to listen broadly and balance story and fact. We should be aimed at educational results. We shouldn't engage just for a feel-good process. A board in touch with community-wide concerns will serve the broad public good rather than being overly influenced by special interests. And the people we need to hear from are the ones we don't agree with, which I think is a challenge, personally, for me. So all the things that, when I think about why we're doing this, I think, the board is really sort of a conduit between the community and the district. Engaging with our stakeholders really helps us do better governance. We talk about asking our teachers to build relationships with their students. And in this way, I think we need to build relationships where we can with our public. Director Barlow.
Yes, thank you. Last bullet point, the people we need to hear from are the ones we don't agree with. I think I know what you mean by that, but I think it potentially creates a us and them automatically, and what we're not trying to do is suggest or give the impression or begin the conversation with, I really don't agree with you, but go ahead because that's what we have agreed we're going to do. How do we know we don't agree with them until we actually hear from them? Mm-hmm. And so can you kind of help me with why the language was constructed in the way that it is with Sure. this last bullet point under the why?
Yeah, I think it's, I think sometimes in our public life, we know that there are groups or beliefs that don't resonate with us personally. I see this play out actually more in other districts than I've seen play out in ours. But there are a lot of, hot button topics that, people are come out on either side of. Last year there was some work at the legislature about changing, Kathy, you might have to help me with this, changing the health curriculum, and especially in terms of sexuality education. And there's some people who were very, very opposed to some of those changes. Now, I personally might feel differently, or as a board, I might sense we feel differently, but I think it's helpful, instead of just dismissing people like you have values that don't match mine, to let's have a discussion about why you feel that way, and is there something that we can learn from each other. So that was sort of, that was where I was going with that bullet point. Does that help, Don? Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else have any of those bullet points resonate with them in any particular way, or the one that Don mentioned about meeting with people that we don't agree with? Kathy?
I would add, and I know that you've already referenced it, it's also the people we need to hear from are the people that we don't hear from.
Yep.
And I know that you cover that later in your presentation, but I thought of that too when I read that bullet.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, Amy. Oh, Amy, I've got a board cabinet member audience. We do have our cabinet here with us, and we are very happy about that. I wanted them here, and was happy they were here, and encouraged them to be part of our discussion with us tonight, because our cabinet members also have to engage with the community in their respective roles. So, Amy?
I just had two thoughts on the bullet that Don referenced. One is that I read it to mean people with different life experiences from our own, that it's valuable for us to hear from people whose life experience has been different, so that we continue our learning and our empathy. And then it also made me think of a meeting norm that our equity specialist or equity coordinator has shared with us, that feedback should be considered a gift. And I think about, if you expose yourself to people with different views, you can often get that gift of feedback that allows you to check your own understanding of a situation and hopefully learn something new from it.
Thanks, Amy. I appreciate that. And I especially appreciate the notion of using it as a gift, because a lot of times feedback does not feel like a gift to us, or not a gift that we want. So I think that's a great perspective.
Indeed.
Anybody else have anything on the why slide? Okay. So the next one, words matter. So this is where I'm trying to move us a little bit in terms of our language, feedback and input to engagement. There's nothing wrong with feedback and input. We need those things. They're really important to us. But sometimes they create this expectation, and the expectation is that we ask each person what they want. We try to get as many people, get as many speakers as we want. We think if we add them up, we'll know what people believe, and then we focus on what people think. Sometimes that's absolutely appropriate. We need that quick survey. We need to do the best we can, getting some information, and that's great. What I'm really focused on more today in our conversation is the engagement piece. And so when we talk to people about wanting to engage them, seeking out people with different perspectives and points of view, which is already John and Kathy and Amy have referenced, producing our public knowledge about values, aspirations, and purpose. There's some give and take among people, and assume we each hold self-interest, but have the capacity and desire to act as citizens. When we met with the students, the Community Engagement Committee met with the students recently, I complimented one of them in particular because, you know, she was really articulate about, we are bringing these issues forward because we want you to hear them, but we know that change probably will not come while we are still students in Rochester Public Schools. But we want these changes to come because they will impact our younger siblings or the students who come after us. And I thought that was pretty dang impressive from a young person to really understand that what they were advocating for came from self-interest, but the outcome was really, the desire was for more than, for the greater good, I guess we could say. So I think that's just one of the reasons that I'd like to think about the getting to the engagement piece. And, you know, those of you who know me know that well, I think probably because I've been hanging around with you guys so long about using examples. So, you know, I always have my Coke and Pepsi, right? And Mike talks about this too. When we do the survey about should we offer Coke or Pepsi in our machines, we get a lot of response, we get a lot of feedback, which is pretty customer based, right? So that's feedback. But if we wanted to engage with our staff about what's in our vending machines for drinks, you know, maybe there would be Coke versus Pepsi, but maybe there's another brand, or maybe there's another product, or maybe we wouldn't offer those because our value is health and wellness, and we think that, you know, drinking soda, even diet soda, isn't good for us. And so even though it's kind of a cheesy example, to me, it's kind of the difference between getting feedback and getting your opinion. But if you want to push through and learn more about people's values and create something together, that's when we move towards engagement. Anything on that people are responding to? I don't see any hands, so we can move on. Great. So I tried to stick with my wedding theme. So I call this the Macy's Registry, right? So this is a concept that was introduced to me, quite a number of years ago from the Harwood Institute. And it moves us from thinking about our stakeholders as customers to citizen owners. So when we think about folks as customers, they start with their self-interest. Everyone is a customer, and that can often lead to customer demands. It can put us in a position to be reluctant to challenge, to think beyond themselves because of the nature of being a customer. And then it focuses on the question, what can we do for you? And so I think that, you know, a customer, when I think of a customer, I think of, you know, a stakeholder bringing us a customer complaint might be a teacher or a textbook or something really specific like that. And that's fine. That there's certainly a place for that. But I want to move us to the concept of citizen owner. Wendy? So Hy-Vee is owner operated, right? So everyone has an interest in the success of the business. If we ask our stakeholders to be citizen owners, we're asking them to hold their self-interest, but also care about the world around them or the district in whole. We look at our different perspectives and choices and talk about the trade-offs. And then we challenge, and maybe this is to Amy's point, right? Take on the challenge and enjoy the tension of the possibilities. I think that for me is really a difficult concept because by nature, I don't like any sort of conflict. And so having a discussion with someone that I might not agree with or don't understand can be really intimidating. And then finally, that we're asking the question, what do we need to do together? I think, again, back to the student groups we've met with, and also that Mike referenced, you know, they really wanted to be part of the work going forward. And I think that can be really empowering for them. And it's I think it's very healthy for us as a district to be able to include them about how they can be participatory in their education and in their district. Any thoughts about customer versus citizen owner? Okay. Go ahead, Joe. Go ahead, Wendy. Oh, the guest list. Discover voices, not simply demographics. We often seek to find people to engage and use a demographic lens. Make sure we get all the groups, assume each group has an opinion, analyze the results by demographic group. Those that know the system can often be the vocal minority, and access and knowledge to engagement does not make a voice more valuable. So really what my thought about this slide was, in the work that Melissa Brandt does in our district with family engagement, the work that Kathy and I have been able to do at Head Start with Jelaine, they are helping us be the representative voice for their communities. They are building the relationships and bringing that voice forward. And, without them, we really would not have as much information going forward. And I think that kind of having them be the proxy is okay in some cases, knowing that eventually, hoping through time, building trust and relationship, that the people who, Melissa Brandt is speaking with, for example, would be willing to come and offer us, engage with the board in a more systemized way, and that Melissa can give us sort of some credibility to do that and work with them. Don?
So how does one get their name added to the guest list?
That's a great question, Don. What do you think?
Well, it probably begins with making individuals aware that there's an opportunity for, some of the things that were identified, that there is a place, there is space, there is a need to hear one's voice without necessarily being put on the defensive because one is dared to respond, because one is RSVP'd us, if you will, and to not limit one's voice. I guess to that end, then I would say or suggest that there's a precautionary element that should be considered when we perhaps host an event, and then limit the event by time, because not everyone is used to having access or knowledge to engage and can state what it is they are concerned with or about in 4 or 5 bullet points or statements. Some have not had been empowered to even be aware that there's an opportunity for them to participate or engage. And so there may be a lot to unpack and unload. And so while it's not really a question meant to force an answer tonight, but more so designed to just probably state what is known, that we have to be intentional in our efforts, which I'm sure there is a element of intentionality. But if there's still, as we may look around and say, well, who's absent from the table, and we still see voices, faces, ethnic groups, and or we know how many languages we have represented within our district. So there may be opportunities even there in terms of trying to make respective voices heard and maybe even identified.
Thanks, Don. I think that's, I think this slide I struggle with in particular because I feel like there's not that definitive answer. I really appreciate your comments about being intentional, and you know, I have you know, in the work that I do kind of outside the board work, you know, we kind of meet we know the criteria that we always kind of start with. You know, if we have an event, if we have a something, we offer food, childcare, transportation, you know, translators, you know, all those things, right? But I think beyond that, we need to get people, we need to help people understand why we really want them there, right? And it's the what's in it for me sort of mentality of asking people to come in and engage with us, right? Any other board member thoughts in terms of this topic? I think this is a good one, especially as we move forward. We don't want it to be, you know, we never want it to feel disingenuous that we're engaging with the community. Kathy?
Well, Deborah has heard my phrase asset map many times as we've planned things. And it was actually the very first task we had to do a number of years ago when we got the Urban Family Engagement Network grant to do our parent network training, was to survey the community resources, populations, cultural groups, to really find out where the parents and families are in our geographic area and who they are, so that we could make sure that our parent network workshops were addressing who they are and what they needed. So you're right, Deborah, I struggled with this slide a little bit because I like to have a list to start out with and to make sure that no one's being left out. But I do understand the intent. It's that you're not done when you check all your demographics off a list if you haven't had intentional and authentic conversations with them, and you're not representing them as the category that you first sought them out for. So I appreciate the nuance in the slide.
Thanks, Kathy. Dawn, did you have something else? Your hand is still up, so I'm not sure if it was still there or new.
Sorry, my hand's now down.
Put your hands down. Great. Thank you, Kathy and Don, for weighing in on that. That's I really appreciate the intentionality and the authenticity. I just think we need to keep that in mind and keep challenging ourselves to make sure that when we're engaging, we have those in mind. So thank you. Okay, Wendy. Okay, go one more slide, please. Okay, we'll see how this slide goes. This slide is my, I did my own slide of the slide before this because I thought the type was too small in this slide before. So this is called the IAP2 spectrum. Some of you have seen this before if you've hung around with me long enough, because I have this up on my wall at home, and this is sort of one of the things that I think about a lot. It really resonates with me because of the public participation goal and the promise to the public. I won't read all of these to you because that would be kind of a drag, but the reason that I like it is when I think about how we might engage with a group, we'll just use group easier than an individual. You know, where do they fall in this category? And I think I think we're seeing this, you know, definitely play out in the last few months. You know, the inform category, you know, the district certainly has been on their toes, right, since March, informing our stakeholders what is going on, what's going on with district learning, what's going on with summer school. You know, that's just what it is. And our promise is that we're going to keep you informed. And I think that is absolutely appropriate. Consulting, I feel like we're doing this in a few places now. Again, this is a little bit more district-based than board-based, but I think it helps us understand. Looking at our fall school options, our goal is getting feedback, but looking at the options, but then what's our promise? We're going to keep folks informed about the feedback, and we're just kind of keep working through it that way. When we get to involve, this is a little bit more on, I think about the work that we've done through our facilities. We've got some folks who are involved in that work very closely. And then our student groups, I think, back to my earlier comment about they want to work with us. So this is where they could get involved when we talk about alternatives. What were the concerns that they brought forward, that they kind of come in the involve category. Collaboration, again, the facilities task force, our bell time group, the equity money, I'd say all have been very, touching into our collaboration. We're going to look for advice and information and innovation, and then come up with recommendations that are informed by that engagement. And then finally, the empowerment. This I feel like is pretty rare for a board to abdicate responsibility, but occasionally happens. I guess, ultimately we empower our stakeholders to vote, right? They get to decide who sits at the board or not. But it's just, to me, this graphic really represents when we do engagement, where it should fall or where it could fall. And then being really, again, using the word intentional about when we do this with the public, what can they expect from us? And what are we promising when we do this? So if we are simply informing them about, calling a snow day, we are not asking for them to make the decision on whether we call the snow day, right? So we really try to keep in those categories. Kathy?
Thanks for that example, Deborah, because that was the thought I had when I was looking at the chart, was all of those words that are along that spectrum, we have used interchangeably in the past. And I really like that when we're engaging with the community, to be able to identify sort of the category of the conversation. It doesn't negate the feedback that they are not in the decision-making authority, because the feedback can still impact the final product. But the role of the feedback in affecting the final product, I think it's important, because I think it makes the feedback of a higher quality when everybody's on the same page of where it's going to go and how it's going to be used.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Kathy. I think we see this, we see the mismatch of this graph play out a lot when we do seek feedback, which, is absolutely appropriate. But when we're, whether it's bell time or whatever, just because we're asking about folks' ideas about bell time doesn't mean that they are somehow voting and we're going to do what the majority of them decide. Jean?
Yeah, and I think that's the key thing, is that I think we need to be really intentional when we interact and engage with the community, that we make it clear we want to hear what you think, but we also make it very clear who ultimately is responsible for making the decision, because there are some decisions which our community legally, by statute cannot make. So I think we have to make sure that we're clear why we want feedback and who has the ultimate responsibility for making the decision.
Thanks, Jean. Kathy, did you have something else? Okay. And just for our viewers at home, I can see hands going up and down on my my scroll to my left side, so that's what I'm watching. Okay, let's move on. Okay, details. This is we're kind of shifting gears a little bit. So I could call on each of you board members to fill in this sentence. Board members need and want to be seen as what? Jean, what do you want to be seen as? I can pick on Jean because she's the vice chair.
Well, my children see me as she who must be obeyed, but that apparently doesn't work with school board things. So I have no answer for that, but thanks for picking at me.
Come on, anybody? Don't make me do a Ferris Bueller. So when I think about this question, board members, oh, here's Kathy and Julie. Thank you, ladies.
I couldn't click fast enough.
Okay, okay.
So I thought, well, informed and responsive and thoughtful decision makers.
That's good. Julie?
Well, I don't know how other board members need and want to be seen. So that's plural, and I'll say I'm just speaking to myself, for myself. And I would say I like to be seen as a bridge builder, which means that you have to be able to listen and consider multiple points of view, figure out how to sort it out, and then how to engage people on either side of the chasm where we're trying to build a bridge, to be able to help to build that bridge so that somehow we can meet in the middle, so that at least we have an understanding of where the other party is coming from. Not necessarily, as you said, that, okay, this is a vote. I think Mike has said this on many occasions. It's like people will tell you that you weren't listening when they didn't like the answer. So I think we have to keep that in mind. But I would say bridge building is really important.
I like that. Don?
And I would simply say reflective and responsive.
I like it. So some of the examples that I came with were efficient, driven by student achievement, transparent, anti-racist, a good financial steward, right? So this is just pushing us to think a little bit about how we want to be seen in the public. And we're all going to have a different answer. And I really appreciate my colleagues that shared. I appreciate my colleagues who didn't share as well. But just think about that, because I think I keep circling back to we tell people what we do for a job. No one knows this job better than the 7 of us right here and those who are still in the community. Mark, what do you got?
It's kind of a random thought as you're talking here, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying is, while the school district has its own mission statement, perhaps the school board should have one as well. What is our mission as a school board for the school district?
Mm-hmm.
It's a thought I think we should ponder.
I like to ponder your thoughts, Mark. And actually, we are going to be talking about board goals next month. And so that might be something we want to explore if we wanted to have some sort of overarching mission statement or something for the board. But, what do we want to reflect to the community? I think that's a great idea. Thank you for that. Mark probably wants to be known as the tech master or something like that. Or no, the
I don't know about that.
The soup chef, right?
The one in front of many buildings.
Jean's going to be cat mom. No.
Okay, no, I have a slightly less snarky
okay.
answer. I think part of the challenge in this is that we need to be seen as the district's representatives to the community, but also as the community's representatives to the school district. So it's a complicated relationship, and I think we have responsibilities absolutely both ways.
Mm-hmm. So is that kind of like we need to be all things to all people?
We do, and clearly we can't be. And we make mistakes, and we have our own issues as well. But it's interesting because I think sometimes the community sees us as just defending everything the school district is doing.
Right.
And we need to be good, accurate, give a good, accurate representation of what the school district's decisions are, but still be very open to what the community's opinions are and their needs are. So it's kind of a two-way street. But my children still do think I need to be obeyed. That's not the school board thing, just making that clear.
Okay, great.
I'll stop now.
Mark, did you have anything else? Your hand's still up. Okay. Jean, your hand's still up. I think also on this slide, you know, people assume we know everything that's going on, and we've discussed this as a board. So you know, that's one of the reasons I put this quote in here. You know, if we don't know something, you know, don't express shock or dismay, which sometimes is difficult. Agree to take the information to the superintendent, reserve judgment until you've heard all the facts. So just, I guess I put that in there just to remind us all that it's okay. You know, we don't have to know down to the littlest detail what's going on in our district. We can certainly find out, but again, people have to understand that, you know, that we don't know that there's, you know, something going on at a particular building. You know, the swings fell off a swing set at whatever building. We probably won't know that, but we can find out about it. Jean, did you have anything else, or put your hand down? And then, okay, Jean?
No, sorry.
Okay, Amy Ike?
I was just going to share that a term that I recently came across in Dr. Kendi's book on Stamped from the Beginning, and he talks about resource hoarding, and I think that the board is often facing this as we are as district leaders, that sometimes the bandwidth of someone who holds power to adjust a system is hoarded by those with the most privilege. And I think that's something we have to keep on the forefront we care about every kid clearly, and we want every kid to be successful. But sometimes so much of our time and energy is taken up with issues that really are resulting from privilege, or the perception that my privilege warrants that I have special dispensation on a decision or something like that, that we don't have time and energy left sometimes to really hear the voices of people who perhaps need our help the most to make the system equitable.
So Amy, when you talk about when he's, I'm sorry, I didn't catch who you said this was from, but the resource hoarding, is that being used as if you know, the district leaders or people in power, board are hoarding resources because we feel what we have to share is proprietary?
No, it's about the people who contact you as a board and ask for you to look into something. It's talking about how those with privilege can often monopolize the time of, say, board members, district administrators, folks like that, and then we don't have time necessarily remaining to get to all the other issues of the folks who didn't pick up the phone, who maybe don't have the time during the day to call us, or, you know, those kind of things. So it's more about the community hoarding the resource of power. That makes sense.
Yes, that makes sense. That's really fascinating. Anybody want to react to that thought? Julie.
So yeah, I think that's an interesting idea. But how do we get the message to the people who aren't as privileged, who don't have the resources, who don't know how to contact us or, you know, anybody in the district? I think that's what I see as a big hurdle in terms of engaging specific groups of people who have not been engaged. You know, how do we reach out to them so that they can be included? Because, you know, if you sit by the phone waiting for it to ring with a group that's been marginalized, I think the phone's going to be silent for a long time. So how do we make the call from our end to the other side?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yep, that's a great wondering question. I'm going to go to Kathy and then back to Amy, and we'll circle back to you too, Julie.
And I really appreciate Amy's terminology, because I think it ties back to what you said earlier, Deborah, about the student that was able to see past their own benefit of their advocacy to how it would benefit others. Because I think a lot of that resource hoarding happens because of a narrow lens. And understandably, we're all advocates for our kids, and we've all advocated for our kids at one point or another. But I think it's part of our responsibility as a board and as a district to educate everybody about the variety of students and needs that are in our district, to maybe help people put things into perspective in that situation.
Yeah. Amy, do you have more to share?
Well, I was just going to respond to Julie's wondering question, which I thought was excellent. And I think the way that we do it is by carving out time periods and effort periods where we are going out into the community, building relationships, really understanding the life experience of our constituents who aren't necessarily going to pick up the phone or send us an email because they have lots of other things that they're trying to get done. But to really protect that opportunity time for them and make sure it can't be hoarded away from them.
I like that. Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. That's kind of where I was going to go too. But just a perfect example is that earlier, Deborah, you referenced Melissa and the work that the Family Engagement Group has done. You know, they go out into the communities and instead of waiting for them, they go to those neighborhoods and have those types of conversations. So I'm just going to reaffirm what Amy just said about we have to change the way that we normally do things and go to them instead of waiting for them to come to us.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Mike. Julie.
I have one additional question, and maybe it's not so pertinent to this particular discussion, but maybe when we set our board goals can be. So are we talking about board members on an individual level, or are we talking about board members as we meet as a full board?
I think both. I think yes, and so you know we're the at the end of the presentation or in a slide or two, we're going to get to the Community Engagement Committee of the board, right? But we all we all have the opportunity to engage with the community in different ways, and sometimes it's an individual, grocery store, right? Though not as much anymore. But I think I just really wanted, to bring this forward as think about, these are things that we need to, I believe anyway, think about as we interact with our community in the district. I really appreciate your question, Julie, about how do we get folks who may not have those resources, who come from privilege. And I think, I think back to, like I said, Melissa Brandt working with communities that maybe they will get comfortable to come to, say, a listening session or a World Cafe, should we have one, or they will be more comfortable coming to a facilities discussion when we have them, right? It's kind of that building relationship piece. You know, when again, you know, I keep referencing the work that Kathy and I do at Head Start, but you know, we really believe in our program that it's setting those foundational things, that parents have a right to certain things in their children's education, you know, and you can ask for them. You can ask your teacher for more information. You can ask your principal if you're not getting enough information, and you go up that chain, right? So that's a real individual way of looking at engagement / advocacy, right? But this slide in particular was a little bit more individual, but really the concepts I think could work anyway. That was kind of a long rambling answer, sorry.
That's fine. So Mike had mentioned Melissa Brandt, and she was the person I was exactly thinking of before he responded to whatever the question was. So if we're looking at it from a board level, then we need to know who those people are, or perhaps what their concerns are, which would mean maybe not us directly getting it from those folks themselves, but having it sent to us or otherwise communicated to us by, you know, Melissa Brandt or others in the building. But once again, that starts to step on what our protocols are as a board in terms of how we handle information and communication, which is, I think, a different discussion that I don't want to get into this at this point, which you should appreciate because I usually like to go down rabbit holes. But just a thought out there.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything else, Mike? Your hand's still up, so okay. All right, great. All right, thanks. Let's move on. See where I've gotten to. Okay, words matter. Okay, so this is a little bit more still on some individual stuff, right? But feeling heard is a basic human need. To listen, just some tips: quiet your mind, read body language, listen below the words, identify feelings, validate. Here's what I'm hearing. Some common themes seem to be what seems really important. Can you give me an example? I'm working hard on this whole list, but sometimes I think as a speaker, I definitely do. I talk a lot and people are not with me all the time. And so I like the give me an example because it makes things concrete. And then of course, now we're playing hockey. We're not on, we shouldn't be on defense. So, you know, some of this is pretty, you probably all have heard this along the way, but this is where I, you know, I've thought about a couple things. You know, sometimes we've all had this interaction with, say, a individual that, you know, they just want to vent. They just want to get stuff off their chest. They just want to tell somebody their thing. And then we say, well, have you talked to the teacher about that? Oh, no, I don't want to bother them. Okay, so that's okay. I mean, that can be our job sometimes. What I really was hoping to develop that I didn't get around to, despite my best efforts, was what really needs to be on this slide is, I credit to Jean, it's the mythical creature whose name is the yabbit. Because how many times are we in a conversation with someone in our community and they say something and immediately we want to say, yeah, but that's not true. Yeah, but that's not really how it works. Yeah, but, right? And so that is such a knee-jerk reaction, I think, especially, well, I'll speak personally as a board member because I have a lot of information. And so when people come and say something that I know is inaccurate, I immediately want to correct them. So, so this is just really about, let's think about how we can hear people and not immediately jump to a response or a correction or you know, trying to get off track, I guess. Mike, did you have something? Your hand is up.
No, I don't.
Okay. And if anybody, well, maybe, I'll call on Melissa, but maybe Mariah could make us Micah could make us a yabbit, whatever creature that might be. But I just keep envisioning this little creature that keeps jumping up every time. Sorry to put you on, put you and your family on the spot.
You could offer a commission. You'd have to pay for it.
All
Working
right.
artist. Without a different job, got to pay for the art time.
Okay. So anybody else reacting to this? I just feel like we pretend to listen a lot of the time. So okay, let's move on. Thanks, Wendy. Let's see. Oh, I don't have my slides numbered. That's part of my problem. So where have you been? So when people don't know something, we often see them as uninformed. And so this is kind of a follow-up to the last slide. We rush to give them a ton of information. We feel like our job is to fully inform them. We kind of treat them as passive, like we're going to just, brain dump everything we know. And so again, I think just think about that. People have some knowledge too. And so this is sort of where I think of my grandma here, who lived with us when I was growing up and then moved into a nursing home. And we'd go to visit grandma and she'd say, "What do you know?" And she'd always kind of run her words together because that's how she talked. And of course, when I was 12 years old, I knew nothing, didn't want to go to the nursing home and visit grandma. It was hot. And so, but I thought of her on this, like, maybe we have these conversations with individuals or groups and start with, well, what do you know? Instead of assuming they don't know anything. And so just sort of changing the thought a little bit, or changing the interaction. I also have a colleague who I won't name, who I often think about, the giving the fish and the fishing rod, right? And so, again, we are the ones who tell people what we do as a job, but again, it's not required of us to do the job for them. And so, sometimes we've all of us, I think, have done this when people have a question about the district. We say, things are located in board docs. Here's where you can find our policies, things like that. I'm just sort of supporting that, we don't have to necessarily track down a policy for a stakeholder. We can lead them to where the policies live, because then if they have a question, they can read other policies. So that was sort of the intention of this slide. Any feedback on this one? Kathy?
So Deborah, when you were doing your research for this, and I don't know that I've been part of many workshops or conferences where this happens, so I'd love to hear if anybody else is experiencing it. The don't assume what people know, right, before you start. I think, in so much of what we do, we put together a PowerPoint, or we put together a presentation or a package of information that we're going to share with the community. And we don't really know how much they know. So you're right, we might overwhelm them with information and et cetera. So is that a practice that we're seeing, now with these online polls and these mentees and things like that, where you can get a sense of what people know about things before you start? Has anybody seen any of that? Or is that a common practice?
That is a really great question, Kathy. And no, I have not seen any evidence of that. Julie?
There.
Sorry, I've seen evidence of it. I don't know any, what to do with it. Sorry, go ahead, Julie. Excuse me.
So I think that's really good in terms of finding out what people know and don't know. And I'll just give you an example from my own experience as a teacher. My very first year teaching in the district, I had fourth graders who were learning how to play the instrument. And it was really hard for me to understand how could why were they struggling? Why was this so hard for them? So I went home, and instead of playing the violin this way, I reversed everything. And let me tell you, it was pretty awful. But I found I could empathize with them a whole lot more once I had that experience. So I think it's important. I mean, we can't do that in every instance, but to try and put ourselves in another person's shoes, which we can't totally do, and then ask for clarifying information about where they are so that we can be the ones who are saying, I need to understand, I need to be informed, as opposed to, like you said, here it is, we're going to just dump all this information at you. So I think that really helps in building relationships as well, which is, I think, is really important. We talk about it all the time with our teachers and students and staff members. So it's equally important, maybe even more so, to be able to build those kinds of relationships with our community members.
Right. I think this is a place too where two things that have just popped into my head sitting here, where some cultural competency, we could really be much better, right? That we make a lot of assumptions about, especially people who don't look like me, that maybe they didn't go to school in the United States, or maybe their school experience was different. And we don't know that until we ask. We don't know what just because they didn't experience school in the same way I might have, doesn't mean they don't know anything about school, for sure. It also sort of reminds me of the little, the thing about, asking where babies come from, and the kid just wants to know what hospital he was born in. And, pretty soon their parents have given him the whole speech. So just kind of, it's almost like, engaging before you even engage. Make sure you are kind of setting the table to have a good interaction. So, okay, go ahead. Okay, we need a photographer, a baker, and a florist at this wedding. I don't know why we're having a wedding, but, and now I'm kind of turning over to Jean, so I hope she's ready. And the point of this was to, I've kind of presented some high level stuff, and appreciate comments and conversation. But we really wanted to get to what we're actually doing now and where we might want to go. So I've asked Jean to take over the next slide or two, lead the next slide or two about what the school board community engagement committee maybe wants to do. Jean?
Thank you. And that particular committee, was created not too many years ago, and I think it's still evolving. The board wanted to make sure that we were providing opportunities for community members to give the board information, and they can do that at board meetings. They can write letters, they can contact individual members, but we decided that having a committee who would meet with community groups might be another alternative. And our goals and our processes have sort of changed. Within the last year or so, we have determined that maybe the best means for doing this is to meet with community groups, and the priority has been given to student groups who have either concerns about the district and specifically about student learning in the district, or have particular messages that they want to give us about their perspective. We still don't really have a very good rubric for determining which groups we meet with, and I think that's something that we need to hone going forward, make our goals and that rubric clearer. But basically what we've been doing is we meet with a group at a place that is comfortable for that particular group. Our goal is to listen, to understand. We ask questions only to help us understand better. The purpose has not been to educate, to provide information unless there's some misinformation, and if clearing up that specific fact or piece of misinformation will help the conversation. And then most importantly, I think we take notes, copious notes about what people are saying. After the meeting, we rewrite the notes into themes. These are the ideas that were recurring, or these are some really significant messages we got from your group. We send those notes back to the group to ask for editing, for confirmation that we got it right, and then we forward those to the superintendent and share them with the board. So the idea there, again, is not to tell people what we think they need to know, but to hear what they believe we need to hear. I think the next steps on this are not just assuring that community that we heard them, but also determining, so what next? What are the next steps? How can we work together to make the kind of changes that we both agree need to be made? How do we empower people in any community to become leaders who will help our school district, not just our board, but our school district, better serve that particular community?
Great. Thanks, Jean. Jean has really been a champion of this committee, and I appreciate her so much. When we started, the reason I have these questions on there, when we started, many years ago, we kind of had these questions to start with. And I think we've sort of moved away from that in recent years, kind of, letting the group decide what we're asking. But I wanted to share those as an example of what we did previously. Go ahead, Wendy. So this is a little, Jean, a little bit more. You can say a little bit more on this, but my intention was, the things that we talked about was just kind of a recapping. Setting the intention and objective of the group. Do they want to just go? They want to say what they have to say, or are they looking for some information? Setting ground rules, I think, is really important. We did this with the students. I think it should be done with every group. What you say here is confidential. We're not going back to a teacher or a building administrator to say, so-and-so said this about you. I think being very clear about that is extremely important. And then the format, as Jean said, finding a time and a place that's comfortable for a group, I think, is just really, it becomes more and more important to me. And so these were just, and Jean, please jump in, because I kind of, did this after we talked, but kind of came up with some recommendations for the Community Engagement Committee, that it does represent the most structured engagement with the community, but really that I think it needs to look at their charge statement. I mean, I think all our committees do, which is going to lead us into our next item, but we'll stay here for a moment, to kind of re-up the charge statement and see what they're really doing and what they want to do, that committee wants to do. And then thinking about a rubric or procedure. As Jean said, we focused on more marginalized groups or students, but there is a little bit of tension between, that's come up recently, as you all know, between groups that we as a committee or board might want to solicit an engagement piece from versus those coming to us. And so I think maybe having a discussion at the committee level and coming up with a recommendation would be a really good idea. Jean, anything else you want to share about the committee?
It's just as you said, I think it's good for all of us to interact with people from the community. And so my thinking right now is exactly as you said. The Community Engagement Committee, I think, needs to come up with a recommendation for a rubric about how we would decide which groups to meet with. And secondly, I think it's also a good idea to have a regular listening schedule, sessions, which could be theme focused, could be just open-ended, where other board members would meet on a regular basis, once a quarter, once a month, whatever, just to listen to folks who want to come in and let us know what they want us to know. It wouldn't be focused on groups so much. So personally, I think we need both.
Yep. So Jean asked me to put in a whole slide for that. So that is the slide that she jumped ahead. I do want to, before we, and I see Kathy's got her hand up, but I do want to mention something else on the engagement piece in terms of a more formal thing. I also think the evaluation piece is really important. You know, the formative and summative, you know, making sure when we're in a group that, you know, we're hearing from everybody or we're hearing from most people and making sure that they have those opportunities. And you guys all know this, right? You know, that one person isn't dominating, et cetera. And then I think we've been good as a committee about, you know, spending some time afterwards and saying, how did it go? Did that go like we wanted it to? What were any issues that we ran into? So, Jean, I'm going to pull you back though, because now that I've put up this, asked Wendy to put up the listening session slide. What Jean and I talked about was that, one, that this had been a topic, but also really, you know, every board member wants to be engaged somehow in the engagement. And so this was sort of our thought. So Jean, and then I'm going to get to you, Kathy, but just hang on just a sec, please. Go ahead, Jean.
I think your slide says it perfectly.
Okay.
And again, yeah, so.
Yeah. Well, and thanks, Jean, for helping with the PowerPoint. The last bullet point there, scribe, listener, reporter. So this is something that we have done at times when we have met with groups and taking this from the, what do you call it? The home visitor program, right? So we know that the home visitor program, when they go meet with a family, you know, they don't bring a pen and pencil. And so we have struggled with that a little bit. And so there have been times when perhaps one of us has taken notes, and you guys know I take notes all the time. I'd probably take notes in church if I went to church. So it's hard for me not to take notes, but I also think that if possible, just having someone be attentive and listening and looking people in the eye and not being distracted can be really important. So that's why I just wanted to bring up a scribe, a listener, and a reporter. So that was that point. Kathy, and then Melissa.
I just want to drop back to the previous slide about the components of the rubric and procedure, because while it's important for us to look at the groups that we could intentionally reach out to, I also think that timing of the outreach that might be ahead of a board decision that's being made. I mean, our biggest one is budget, right? So if we could be intentional as to the timing of specific community engagement committee outreach that might be related to that topic, then we're not two ships passing in the night getting the feedback here when we're actually, the decision has been made or isn't going to be made for a long time. The other question I had under that community, the second paragraph that says a balanced plan with room, we all want to hear. Could you just maybe state that for me?
Yeah, well, I did realize that those were kind of my holding notes, that they really didn't belong there. But the point was, what I think I was going towards was, no, you have to go back, Wendy, because, okay, thank you. So that we would kind of come up with a balanced community engagement plan with room. So knowing that we have student school board where we get student voice. We've had some other conversations that have gotten a student voice. And then as you see that, you know, we're proposing, recommending, whatever you want to call it, that, you know, there's the community engagement committee that's really focused more on groups, but that we take the notion that was raised by Melissa about scheduling listening posts, listening sessions, whatever we want to call them, and that all of that can kind of work together because we all want to hear. That was my note. So that's what those are from. So why don't you go one more, Wendy, and then Melissa, go ahead.
So here's some of the things I'm thinking about as I'm listening about the proposed structure of listening sessions, whether it be general or specific topics. And the idea of board members rotating through so that, you know, everyone gets a chance to participate in that. Two things come to mind there. First of all, that would it be possible to record the listening session so that board members who weren't present would be able to hear that for themselves if they felt, and if that's not possible, you know, especially I think if it's on a specific topic of something we're seeking input for rather than just an open, hey, come and tell us what you guys are thinking. I would put forward that rather than limiting the number of board members who can be there, it would be preferable to just post it as an open meeting so that more than 3 board members can be there. Depending on the topic, I'm not saying that has to be routinely the practice, but I would just put it out there so that we aren't feeling limited by something that, quite frankly, doesn't need to limit us unless we want it to.
Okay, thanks. Kathy, I think, is giving a thumbs up. I'm not sure if she's giving a thumbs up to that, but there's a thumbs up in the chat. Jean.
Yeah, and the idea, Melissa, about recording the sessions would certainly make it easier and make it possible for everybody to listen. Issue with this whole idea about the note taking and the feedback is based on a research area called phenomenology. The deal with recording is that there is data privacy issues involved, and they sort of it's almost involves an IRB kind of thing. So note taking is about as close, I think, as we can get, having one person taking notes and then getting the feedback from the community. Is this what you said? Because then everybody can be anonymous and you don't have to have people sign disclaimers or get, you know, any of that kind of written approval ahead of time.
So just a clarifying question. I see your hand up, Melissa, but Melissa, were you talking more specifically about the listening sessions versus, we have to call them something else, versus the community engagement meetings?
I think probably, well, what used to be listening posts. If the board has a topic that they know that is coming at them on a future agenda, and it's decided by the board or the community engagement committee or whatever that maybe in advance of this decision we should collect some feedback. In that kind of sense, I don't have a problem with there being a team of people who will collect the feedback and then bring that back to the board in written format. I'm thinking more the idea of the community being able to come to the board to express their concerns over or more general topics or individual topics to them, topics that are unique to the individual. And one of the things that I've been struggling with, being that I've been on the board now for a year and a half and we haven't had any listening sessions, is the idea of representation. So our communication protocols state that when we get feedback or concerns via email or personally, that we should refer those on to the proper department. I personally have not felt like I have checked my own mental box of I'm being a good representative, because I haven't had a chance to publicly say to all the people who I'm representing, if you have a concern, come talk to me. Similar to how our representatives or our mayor or whomever posts a time, you know, once a month sometimes, where if you have something you want to talk to me about, let me know and come and talk to me. So those things are at odds in my mind, that we as a board, because we're a 7-person board, we tend to collect feedback and input as a group and share it with the group and use it as the group, which is great. But at odds to that is I feel somewhat limited by our own protocols and agreements in being able to say, hey guys, if you've got an issue, come talk to me. So I'm not entirely sure that knowing that there is a listening post that other people are going to attend and report back to me fulfills my personal need to interface with the community, to be, accessible, and to have the community know that I want to interface and I want to listen and I want to represent them. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about when I'm contemplating these coordinated listening sessions. I personally may feel like I'd like to be at all of the general listening sessions, and if so, there should be a way that we should be able to go about that. Either that, or if, I don't feel like I need the permission of the rest of the board to post a thing that says, hey, I'm going to be at, XYZ coffee shop at 10 a.m. Feel free to come and talk to me. But that is not something that we are discussing doing right now. I think it's up to each individual if they want to do it. But these are just, I'm sharing the thoughts that are going through my head and my frustration with having not had a formal way established up until now to do that.
Okay. Julie, then Mark.
Okay, I had a question on the 1, 2, 3, the fourth bullet point on this slide, hosted by 2 to 3 board members not on the community engagement committee. Does that mean that one of those 3 members is not supposed to be like taking the lead at that meeting, or does that mean that, I'm sorry, you're on the community engagement committee, you can't even show up? I guess I'm asking, what does host mean in your mind?
Host, yeah. So this is what I was trying to get at, and this is only a, this is trying to interpret comments from the board over the last however long, right? So they could be accurate, or I could have missed the target. So I was feeling like the community engagement committee, as designated by the board, does the engagement with stakeholders for the most part. I was feeling the tension of if you're not on the community engagement committee, you have no opportunity to engage with stakeholders. So my thought was that the committee deals with the much more structured groups of people. But if we started listening sessions again, I'm going to call them listening posts. I'm going to call them listening posts and engagement sessions. If we started listening posts, that would give the board members who are not on the committee opportunity to be in front of the public, speak with the public, things like that. And so that was the intention of that. I mean, it's just an idea. If you guys hate the idea, that's fine. It's, I was trying to be all things to all people is what I was trying to do. Does that help?
The other thing yeah, a little bit. The other thing I'd like to mention from my role as a teacher, former, retired 10 years already, I can't believe it, but time flies when you're having fun, is that I really appreciated when there would be maybe 2 or 3 times a year, there would be a couple of school board members who would make themselves available during lunch period times for staff if they wanted to just come in and chat. Oftentimes the superintendent did the same kind of thing. And I have felt that that's really sort of been off limits for school board members to do that. And I think maybe now is not the best time to have that discussion, but I think it's important because the people who work in our buildings vote. They are also our constituents. I suppose we could say, well, here's where I'm going to be on such and such a day, but we've also emphasized that when we are engaging community, that we go to where they are and not always expect them to come to us. So I'm just throwing that out there for some consideration.
Thank you. Mark.
You know, building a little bit upon what Melissa was saying is, you know, if these are scheduled ahead of time, I guess I failed to see why we couldn't just advertise them, couldn't just meet the open meeting laws, just couldn't have whomever from the school board wanted to be there to be able to be there within the rules that we have to abide by. So I do think it would be beneficial for the whole board, because even when we have the best intentions of sharing what we've heard, we're all going to hear different voices and different stories at the end of the day.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Don?
Yes, and you've made it quite easy. I appreciate the differentiation between listening post and engagement sessions. This is simply a offering, if you will, to formally communicate. It seems like the existing structure of engagement sessions as they've been known in the past, as well as the creation of listening post as they may relate to the future. And I support both. And whether it is a matter of fulfilling the public meeting notice and simply allowing listening posts to be able to be attended by all board members who are able or not, certainly there should be structure still nonetheless. But then also, in listening to some of the comments of my fellow board members, it seems like there was a question regarding the role of board members as it may relate to attending or engaging staff personnel, which again, under the auspices of listening post engagement sessions, those are more so geared to the public, not to suggest that staff is not public as well. There probably is a role for board members to be accessible, available to, much like when we were doing the referendum. Guess what? Board members were able to be a part of that process. So I think that's a good point to consider. And then finally, the role, and this, what you presented was not intended to necessarily address the efforts of individual board members to engage, be it in virtual meetings / surveys and or speaking opportunities before groups or the like. And I think it's important that we kind of stay focused on what is before us, and then maybe park these other items to be addressed at some future or fully incorporated into what you're presenting tonight.
Thanks, Don. Mark? Did you have something else?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. Then Melissa and Kathy.
I just wanted to reinforce what I heard Director Workman say about reincarnating our past practices. And by us, I mean the school board, even though maybe none of the 7 of us was on that school board, but of being more accessible to staff. I think we maybe need to ask whether or not we were wanted rather than just, show up at their buildings. But I guess they wouldn't have to come to the session if they weren't interested. But I personally, from those days, was on the other side of the fence. I was the constituent, not the board member, and I really greatly appreciated the effort that past school boards put into things like those listening posts. I remember one being held at one of the meeting rooms in the public library. I mean, there's just a great variety of, one was in a cafeteria style area, but I really appreciated the variety of opportunities there were to have a personal conversation, not just send an email or stand in front of the board in front of a public comments, but I think that it would be helpful for us to have some parameters on what we should and shouldn't engage in, similar to how we have protocols for our email communications. We should probably put some effort into developing, what to do with different kinds of in-person interactions. But anyway, I just wanted to give a second to the idea of doing some more formal interfacing with staff, and perhaps that is more the job of the Community Engagement Committee, except that as a board member, that's something I'd like to personally be able to be involved with as well. I wouldn't want the impression to get out there that there were only certain board members that were interested in taking input.
Kathy?
Not to make this a reinforcement of other board member statements, but I've heard a few board members say that they've been reluctant to participate in individually organized engagements with the public, similar to what we see other elected officials and other positions doing in the city and the county. And I agree with Don, while it might not be a topic for us to reconcile tonight, and I know, Deborah, a lot of your research focused on what a board does sort of together on this kind of engagement. But is there anything that we know from other boards where there is a protocol or a procedure or a policy or a practice that says, because a school board works in this way, those kinds of individual engagements are, not helpful, or it's, oh, sure, other school board members and other districts do this all the time. But what I do like is that we're having this conversation after we've had that whole previous piece of this PowerPoint, because, if we're all approaching our community engagement the same way, whether we're doing it individually or whether we're doing it as a intentional work of a community engagement committee, or whether we're doing it at a listening post, I think it's going to be more comfortable for ourselves, and it'll be more comfortable for our constituents. So I guess my first question is, we have an impression of what we can and can't do. Is that right? And how can we use this common sensibility of how to do community engagement that you presented us tonight to sort of weave through whatever we do?
Melissa, did you have something? Sorry, I'm distracted.
Nope, that's me forgetting to put my hand down.
Got it. I just noticed it. So I don't know that I can answer both of your questions, Kathy. I would say I would say that in my experience and my so experience meaning talking to other districts, looking at other districts, and some of the professional development that I've done on community engagement, things like staff, meeting with staff, individual engagement, coffee hour type things, really are not common, not, I won't go as far as say not best practice, but I personally would have some reservations about that. although, and we're not going to talk about them tonight. They are on my little side list here. Don also brought up speaking opportunities. We know that those come up from time to time, and although by protocol, the chair speaks for the board, but Don has been asked to speak at things and lets me know. I think others of you have as well, just in my term, and I think that's fine. So no, I don't see a lot of the things that have been mentioned here. In terms of how we weave this going forward, I don't know that I have a direct answer other than I just wanted, I felt like because the need for what I would call authentic community engagement, I think is becoming more and more important in our district, in our city, society, et cetera. I felt like we should have good conversation about what that means and some of the best practices. And as it sort of, it falls under the charge statement of the Community Engagement Committee, I thought this was a good time to do that. And so that was sort of the impetus. What we do with it now, I don't really know, but I guess we will see how it manifests going forward. So I've got about 6:22. This is the end of my PowerPoint. I did not include my bibliography because that's in a Word document. It didn't make it over to the PowerPoint, so I will definitely send that out or send it to Wendy to post. But what else? Any other thoughts, final thoughts, other ideas, things to continue or consider going forward to put on my little list here? Julie. And then Kathy.
I think, yes, to put this on your list, I think it's really important that we have a discussion of the role of social media in our interactions with the public. I've tried to make it clear to people on Facebook that I'm not going to engage in a conversation real specifically about stuff, but will provide information or source to that information. Even if a person says I'm not speaking for the whole board, that sometimes comes across as yes, indeed you are. So that's a conversation for another day, and I'd like to have it in the parking lot or some other place where it won't die.
Yep. Thanks, Julie. It is on one of my is on my protocol list, but thanks for bringing it up. Kathy?
Okay, so two things I don't want to forget either. The first is when I was reading the PowerPoint, I was thinking about sort of laying the groundwork for our community in terms of the resources that they have to understand our communication pathways, vehicles. And, we do have that school board page on the website. And I was thinking about things like adding the chain of communication there, or adding a link to the district organizational chart there might help them to ask their question of the right person from the beginning. So maybe as we're working through this process of engagement, we can think about the kind of information that we want to be accessible to people when they're looking for our email address. There might be some other resources that might help facilitate it. And then the next piece was, and I know you just said, I don't know where we go from here, but maybe before we leave the conversation, we could agree on some next 3 steps so that we have a sense of, for me, it's time frame. Obviously, we have so many study sessions coming up with so many things. I just want to know where it fits into the whole plan for our own work plan.
I will try to answer your question and help me if I don't. And thank you for asking it. So just reiterating what you were talking about was kind of continuing to create resources and localizing our resources in one place in terms of communicating with the board or how we communicate. Again, back to my I'm going to get a t-shirt that says we're the only ones who explain how we do our work. In terms of moving forward, specifically with the committee, that's kind of an easy one because when we move on to committee assignments, I think, my recommendation is going to be that every committee, not every committee, but that the other committees of the board also kind of look at their charge statement, and we sort of, kind of re-up those all at the same time. In terms of the listening sessions, didn't really think much farther than bringing forward the concept. And of course, not really knowing how the world is, what are going to be our opportunities. It's going to be not more difficult, but we're just going to have to get kind of savvy. I think we could put those two things hand in hand, and they're appropriate, so that if we say in our next item, for example, we'd like to have renewed charge statements by this date, maybe the first meeting in September or something like that. And then at that time, we will also have, put out a schedule for listing posts for the school year or something like that. And then maybe just get some of those feedback from board members, via email, like this would be a good time or this would be a good place or something like that. So my thought was that those would get scheduled in September, and then they're on the calendar for the year. Wendy can put them on there. They're out there. And then barring a snowstorm, we've got a plan. And I think that makes us feel more comfortable, and that makes us more accountable to the public. Kathy?
And thank you for that, because I think that I love the scheduling ahead of time. But, given that we have all these virtual tools now, especially Microsoft Teams, I assume that if we wanted to schedule something virtually, we could probably access the technology the district has too, right?
Yep.
Okay, great.
I imagine so, yeah. Okay. Oh, Julie?
Yes. I was really impressed with all the information that was on slide 6. You don't need to go back to it, but it had to do with input and feedback. And I was thinking, a lot of the things that were mentioned there, especially the first section with 4 bullet points, is really good too for how we actually conduct our meetings. So something to think about moving forward.
Can you say
I can
more
read
about
them
that?
if you like.
Because
Yeah. Okay. It's the words matter slide, and it says, we will ask each person to quickly give their individual view, set up the goal to get as many speakers as possible, except that when we add up everyone's response, we know what people believe and focus on what people think. And then, considering different points of view and weighing choices and trade-offs and those kinds of things. So, I think we do a certain amount of that in our board meetings already, but just another perspective.
Yeah.
So I really thank you for those. I thought they were really good.
Thanks. I again, let's tell people about our job. It is difficult that we do our work in public, and whether the topic is something as routine as milk bids or as complicated as budget, right? I often feel like, I will speak for myself, that I'm trying to listen and respect what my colleagues are saying, but I'm also formulating my own thoughts or questions and get a little distracted and focused on that. And so it's not exactly what this slide is about, but it does remind me of, I appreciate that you're bringing this up, and how that this can inform our board work as well, that we need to listen to each other more carefully, and listen first to understand and all of that stuff, and then make sure we're truly engaging with each other. Julie?
Yep, one more comment and then a request. So my comment is that, I think it's important for board members to let the public know that we aren't seeing materials for the very first time in a meeting, that we do an awful lot of homework on our own, which can vary depending on what the subject matter is. So, and then my request is if we could take a 5-minute break before we begin the next discussion. I'm sure you would appreciate that, Deborah.
I would appreciate
especially.
that, yes. Anything else, board members? Thanks to Wendy for running the screen, so I didn't have to learn how to do that as well, because there's just so many things. Thank you for cabinet members who have hung in there with us and participated either verbally or through chat. That is much appreciated. And as I said to you in an email that this is part of our teamwork. So appreciate that. If nothing else, I am going to what's my language? Recess. I'm going to recess the meeting at 6:31, and we will reconvene at 6:40. Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Can I request 10 minutes?
Yes. So 6:42.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we will recess for 10 minutes. Thank you. This meeting at 6:43 p.m. Okay, we are on to committee assignments. Again, apologies for my paper rustling that goes on here. So the way I see it, we have three items before us, and I'm taking these sort of out of order. So I sent everybody late today the updated committee descriptions. Thanks to folks who looked at these and submitted and got, some updated language. That's much appreciated. I don't feel that we need to look at this together. My suggestion is we have this in our hands, that everybody look this over, and then when we come back, whenever, to talk about committee assignment stuff, like I mentioned in our previous thing, then we can maybe say, yep, we're good with that, and it can be filed in the library of the board docs. So everybody look at every committee. If there's things that stand out you don't understand, please let me know. If there's things that you disagree with, please let me know. This is a pretty internal document, just that this is kind of what we do. So any questions about that? Jean, sorry, I'm flipping
Just
back.
a quick one. There is one new committee on here, and I think that if we can't vote today, but I think if we decide to add a legislative committee, we'll need to vote on that at the next meeting. I don't think that should affect this discussion much.
Yep. Good point. And actually, see, Jean's throwing me off track already. But I'm totally teasing Jean. Committees of the board by policy are supposed to come before us in resolution. So my suggestion is the policy committee, the community engagement committee, long range planning, and potentially legislative committee come back as a group resolution that we can support at the board level and vote on. Melissa?
Thanks. Another committee that has been floated in the past during various, mostly study sessions, has been the idea of a board governance committee. This came up, at least I remember specifically when we were doing the book study, and there were times that we were looking at other districts' policies, and there are some districts that have their own self-governance policies. But there's a lot of things that are board work, things that the board does for itself, such as its self-evaluation and those types of things, that I think the board might benefit from having a subcommittee specifically designated to keep those things going rather than leaving them on the chair's plate. Any of the protocol types of discussions and documents that need maintaining, any policies that we might, or other types of protocols that apply only to ourselves, that aren't things that we necessarily get from MCGT. My brain is blanking again, but I think that having a group of people internally to the board whose job it is to keep their attention on those types of tasks. I think it could facilitate us keeping our own work rolling. Maybe somebody else can jump in and remind me some of the other times that concept has come up. Should have written it down.
Jean?
Sorry, I forgot to lower my hand.
Okay. Julie?
Okay. I really like Melissa's idea, and it is something that we have talked about tangentially during previous study sessions, I think, including maybe the one that we had with the the gal who came from MSBA a year and a half or so ago. And if Melissa would be interested in having some help in fleshing that out, I would be more than willing to work on it with her. If somebody else wants to jump in, that's fine too. But I think it's something we should at least seriously consider once we have a more specific description of it. Or maybe, Melissa, you might even have that now.
My brain is not pulling things to the forefront as quickly as it should have. I did not write it down, which is just thought for sure I'd remember it.
Don?
I'm just seeking clarification. You weren't necessarily looking for ideas for new committees and or looking for the establishment of or a working group of board members at this point, were you? I guess I asked, I mean, if Director Atmanson and Workman want to work independent to come up with something to later present to the board, I believe they could probably do that. But I support what is presently before us. And as you originally suggested, take time to review it. And what was your expectation of us when you suggested take time to review it? What were you wanting us to do at some point in the future, maybe identifying that point in the future? You want us to review if there are something, omissions or clarifications you want us to respond how? Directly to you or the exec committee? What would you like us to do?
Yep. Thanks, Don. So pulling out a couple things from your statement. So the updated committee descriptions that I sent out today are a culmination of work by a variety of board members over the last month since our June 2nd meeting, a month and a half. So just asking that everybody kind of look those over and make sure that they, if there's any concerns or questions, yes, funnel them back to me, but they will, I guess come back to the board in terms of consensus, like, yep, this is how we understand committee X to work, and that's fine. Your second question, I think, is more to Melissa's point about a new committee. We did have discussion at the June meeting about forming new committees. I guess we can always talk about adding new committees. I don't have an issue with that. I am not fully understanding what Julie and Melissa are envisioning. So whether that is something that gets discussed and fleshed out more tonight versus a proposal that gets worked on and comes back before the board, I don't have a strong feeling of. Don, does that kind of answer your questions before I move on to someone else?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Julie, then Kathy.
Yes, I'd like to say I'm really happy to see that this legislative committee is finally on a list of something that we might actually do. I think I have been talking about this for at least the last 5 or 6 years, and I can't tell you how delighted I am to see other school board members who are supportive of this committee. So thank you all for that. I really appreciate it because I think it's really necessary. And we've got some excellent models from other school districts in terms of what their legislative committees do. And I suspect that we could also find some models. Melissa and I could find some models of other school districts for a governance kind of policy or committee that they have as well.
Kathy, and then Jean.
Oh, okay, I'm on. I don't know if I'm missing something, but where do you see the legislative committee listed except on the chart of our potential committee assignments?
It's only on the chart, Kathy, because there's no
Okay.
verbiage.
All right, good. Just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something.
Yep.
And I think on the issue of the board governance committee, I would agree that I don't think it's something we can hash out tonight, but I do know it was a notion and a conversation that came up in the policy governance book study. And I think if we all search through our notes, we could probably find a list of things that we thought might be appropriate for that committee. So I would be in favor of, I guess, empowering whoever was interested in looking and seeing what the best practices are for that option and revisiting it later.
Jean?
Exactly what Kathy just said. I think that's a great idea. And Julie and Melissa, thank you for volunteering to get that together and bring it back to the board.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. So, here is our beginning task list, right? So every board member is going to read the list of updated committee descriptions to make sure they can give that a thumbs up. Thumbs up is, we'll use that instead of consensus at our meeting, right? Because everybody can do that. Then as I talked about earlier, the board committees, so community engagement policy and long-range planning. My recommendation is to look at their charge statements, which are from March of 2015. I have them, if you can access them yourself, there's the fishing rod, or I probably have them all on one piece of paper and can send them to you, but I can send those out as well. And then the third thing on this piece would be proposal on some sort of, I'm just going to call it a governance committee and a proposal for a legislative committee. And so holler if I haven't captured something. Melissa, go ahead.
I noticed that RPSF remains on the committee assignments. Was that with an intention of it just being a liaison position, or with the school board member remaining a full-fledged voting board member of RPSF? And if not, was there going to be a letter, as we discussed previously, that would go to RPSF and ask for a bylaws change to remove the school board from the board of RPSF?
Yeah, so I think I was unclear about, I remember talking about sending a letter asking to be removed from the bylaws. I didn't remember which way we decided if we wanted someone permanently assigned, or not permanently assigned, but assigned. Do you remember?
I think it would, I mean, my opinion that I expressed at the time was that it would be beneficial to have a board member with a relationship with the foundation, okay, you know, on an annual basis. But I did mention it at the last RPSF board meeting that there may be a request for the bylaws change. So I just wanted to make sure that was something that was still being intended. Of course, at any time, any school board member is welcome to be a full-fledged RPSF board member. As not an assignment, as a personal commitment.
Right. So let's come to consensus on, do we want to leave RPSF as an assigned committee? I guess we're not voting, so thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways. Julie's making a different shape with her hand, so go ahead, Julie. Unmute though, Julie.
Everybody, Deborah, do you keep hitting my microphone?
Now we can.
Okay, you didn't miss anything. So I remember it as that we would send a letter to the Rochester Public School Foundation to ask that we school board members be removed from the bylaws as a regular voting member, but I absolutely agree with Melissa. I think it's really important for the board to maintain a relationship with the group, because this foundation does amazing things for our students, and I fully support the work that they do. So I think it's also a good way for RPSF to have a voice to report back to the board what they are doing or not doing in the case of this next year, for all of the grants and everything else that are going on. So I think it's a real vital connection.
Kathy?
I was going to support what Melissa and Julie said, and I think if we have an ongoing relationship with the Rochester Public School Foundation, in that they're providing the gift cards to recognize our above and beyond, that you know, having a board member be able to commit to attending those meetings, I think is the least we can do. But I would defer to Rochester Public School Foundation to make the case as to why they would need us to stay on the board. So unless I hear otherwise about that, I'm okay with asking them to take us out of the bylaws. But I don't know, maybe just reiterating to board members that it's a good idea if we all take a turn making a connection with the organization through our participation. Thanks.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is that we have consensus, and I would agree to leave this as a committee assignment, as a designated assignment, with the intention to ask to be removed from the actual voting body. Melissa, is that
Yep.
anything else?
That's good. I did have another question if we're moving on.
Yeah, go ahead.
On the spreadsheet of tentative assignments, I don't see area council.
Yeah, area council we took off as Kathy, do you want to I don't know if it's, do you want to speak to that?
It's on there.
It's not on the assignment sheet.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Sorry.
We're talking about the spreadsheet. Yes.
Yep.
So the decision we made is, as opposed to assigning one board member to cover it for the year, is that we would send the board, area council, but me, would send the board a list of meetings that we have scheduled for the year and topics, so that they know if there's something we're specifically going to talk about, and give board members the opportunity, encouraged by the chair, to attend at least one meeting a year, and that the chair would make sure we don't have more than 4 board members at a meeting. And that the superintendent, should he be so gracious to continue attending our meetings, to give the district update.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. So anything else on the committee, the updated committee descriptions? Anything else, Melissa? Your hand's up, so. Thank you.
I just can't manage that hand thing.
I know.
We need somebody assigned to lowering hands for us, I think.
Wendy does it sometimes, but I don't know. We always catch them. Okay, so we've discussed that piece. The committee descriptions, for lack of a better term, future committee proposals, bylaws change, okay, so we're going to set that aside and move on to the purpose statement. Now, again, apologies that this didn't come much earlier, but this is pretty similar to what we looked at last month in terms of what was brought forward then. And I tried to, I didn't hear specifically any changes. I just tried to incorporate anything that folks said. So this is more the purpose procedure piece of committee assignments. And Oh, so I was describing it to Julie today because I wasn't wearing a PTA hat. I was wearing my school board hat all day. But in PTA world, we talk about every PTA unit has bylaws. And most of you probably know what bylaws are like. They're wordy, legally kind of fussy statements. But PTA has moved to having, in addition to bylaws, having standing rules. And standing rules are more flexible in terms of when you can change them. So my analogy was that we have policy, and we have policy that might oversee committee assignments or committees, but we could have purpose or procedure documents that are a little bit more flexible and easy to change versus having to do the more formal thing of a policy. So that's sort of where this came from. So this document just goes over why we think it's important to attend a committee. And then this was the proposed language we talked about last time. That was my proposal, certainly open to whatever other board members' suggestion, that in January, the newly elected chair and vice chair immediately assume particular committees. The newly elected board members fill the committees of those seats that they are filling. You guys understand what I'm saying there. If they're unable to fulfill that, they talk with the chair. Then in May, we do the committee list, much as we've done this year with the survey. In June, we discuss the relevance, any additions, subtractions. Chair assigns committee assignments based on preferences, time limitations, balance of assignments, other criteria. Let's see. Then just the additional things I put on here, suggestions: if board members are unable to attend a single meeting, they may ask any or all colleagues to attend in their place. Board members who have difficulty attending their assigned committee should discuss alternatives with the chair. So feedback on the purpose policy piece. Purpose procedure. Any other P words we need to put in this? Melissa, go ahead.
I think it's an excellent start of a structure. I'm a little bit confused in the very first section. Is it the first section? The committee assignment purpose. By attending a committee, the board members should be clear that they are bringing information to the organization. That would maybe make more sense if we were talking about external committees, because that's not what we're doing in internal committees. But I'm still not really clear with that sentence or part of the sentence. I'm wondering, I don't have a suggestion for improving it. I'm hoping somebody else might understand my confusion with it.
I think I don't remember if I wrote this or if it was pardon me, my phone is ringing a lot today. Now it's worse. Excuse me. Put it over here. I don't know if I wrote this or if I pulled it from somewhere. It doesn't matter. I agree it's a little confusing. I think I think the intention behind that piece was that was probably about the authority, that it's an informational, and yes, it does look much more directed to external committees that you attend, but you're not making promises or agreements on behalf of the board. And then the second piece of that is the receiving information that directly supports board governance, especially in terms of policy, community engagement, or long-range plans for the district, was just so that when if an external committee comes and asks us to serve on their, to join them, let's say, we need to know that it's appropriate to the work that we do. But we definitely can clean up that language. So thanks.
Yeah, I'm thinking that maybe, I mean, when I'm working with other committees, like I'm on Youth Commission, I don't think I'm expected to bring information to them. I think I'm there to be a liaison. I wonder if we can even make that wording a little bit more general. because it seems like the responsibility to bring information to the organization is not always the expectation of the organization.
Right. I think, I think it's, in terms of bringing, I guess maybe my thinking was, maybe it's not the purpose when you go to youth commission that you're bringing information, but you may be asked to provide information, right?
So an informational role,
yeah,
serving in an informational capacity. Yeah, I would just recommend making that a little bit more of a catch-all statement.
Okay, Julie, I'm gonna let Julie jump in.
Yeah, okay, so it says by attending a committee. Is that by attending a committee meeting, or is that by serving on a committee? The words are not making a whole lot of sense to me as to which way you intended that, or both. Because you can't just attend a committee.
I suppose I meant committee meeting or by serving on a committee. Okay. I don't think it matters.
And then the board should, bringing information to the organization and are receiving information that directly supports board governance, especially in terms of policy. So that means that when we report back to the board, we shouldn't report anything unless it directly supports board governance, because that will probably wipe out most of our committee reports right there.
So I'm feeling like you're uncomfortable with this language, and we've had this language for a while. So,
well, I apologize because I looked for it. I asked you a couple days ago if you could send that to me again, and I didn't get it. So you're right. I haven't looked at it recently until, it came out this afternoon.
So if you would like to propose work on proposing some new language, I'm fine with that. I don't even necessarily think that we need a purpose. My intention was that looking at information from other districts, that they were just, their purpose was why committee work is important, was more what I was going towards versus getting bogged down in the weeds of the particular language.
Sure, I'm happy to take on that task, and you might just get it back exactly the way it looks now. So don't be surprised with anything.
Okay. Any other feedback on the first paragraph purpose statement? Okay. All right. Procedurally, so this was a procedure that we started talking about last time. I tried to incorporate anything that got brought up. There's still some things that I have on my copy that were highlighted that didn't really get discussed, but any feedback here? Jean.
Yeah, I like the idea that a number of committees will be for 2 years, and that there will be, and I think this is indicated by your chart that you come up with later, when there are 2 or 3 members on a particular committee, that one will roll off as others stay on, so that there won't be complete upheaval in any committee with all new members. I think that's really smart, and that people could be on the same committee for 2 years anyway. I guess the question is, it says here that when there are new board members who come on, they will assume the membership of the following committees. But my question is, will most committees then change membership in January or in the fall, like August or September. The chart looks as if it's going to be, the turnover is going to happen in January. Or am I reading that wrong?
I won't say you're reading it wrong. I think I just looked at, I didn't think so much about January versus June. I was trying to, in the chart, which I don't want to move too much into the chart before we finish this piece of paper, and I know you're not pushing us there, but that I tried to chunk things into half years, knowing that that if we get new board members, they're coming in January, we get a new chair, vice chair in January. So if that seems to be the more logical time, that's fine. We know we've had, discussion back and forth about, feeling strongly about committees that run school year versus calendar year. I don't know. I think there's cases to be made either way. So I've sort of, honestly, I kind of just sort of ignored that whole piece. How's that for an answer? My really long answer.
Good
Okay.
answer.
Julie.
Yeah, I basically like the format that I see here, but when I first looked at it, I thought, oh my gosh, she just planned out like 5 years worth. And then I realized it was in the half year segment. So that was actually rather a relief. So I like the format. I like the way you did it. I really like the color that you assigned to me. That was awesome. And
okay, don't get too far on the chart though, Julie, because we're not quite there yet.
Okay.
But
sorry.
No, that's okay.
Okay, you had asked. I think there was something on the document about when newly elected board members, which is why I was actually looking at the chart. So I think, yeah, we've been round and round on this before. I think that we should keep it the way it is in terms of actually reviewing our committee assignments in August or July in this case before the new school year starts, and then it'll just make it easier to, if there are new board members, to assign them to the board seat that they are in. So example, I'm in seat 4, so if somebody were to win my seat, they will eventually, then they would take over my assignments, rather than doing everything all at once, because this would give continuity for the year, and it would also give new board members the opportunity to have a little bit better idea about what all the committees do, rather than having to say, well, I don't like this committee that you've assigned to me. Can I have a different one, because they won't have experienced it. So I like what you had to say about newly elected board members.
Thanks. Kathy.
I agree. Everything that's here looks really good. The only piece that I'm wondering if we want to add, and we might know this better once we've done it, but is the handoff of committee responsibilities, documentation, knowledge from one board member to the next. Like for the policy committee, I know there's the binders that we have to hand off, but maybe if there's just a step in this process, especially if it's a mid-year, mid-school year, where the old board member and the new board member who's assigned to the committee can, somehow collaborate on like a mind meld or something.
Okay. So how about this, Kathy? How about if we just add under additional procedures something about, and I'm going to ask you to write it because you brought it up. You don't have to write it now, but something about when committee change happens, board members should work together to make sure that information is shared or something like that. Is that fair? Okay, great. I like that. Yeah, the other thing that got to Jean's point about the when we change and things like that, I was really trying to capture a couple different things, so that doesn't always fit into one. We're not looking at the chart yet, but we talked about longer term limits. Do we do them for 2 years versus 1 year? Some districts have 2 years out. And then the other idea, which we've talked about, and I is reflected in the chart when we get there, but it's kind of that staggering or stair step. So our committees, our board committees that have 3 people on them, and student school board that has 2, that we would always retain somebody to kind of be the overlap as new people came on. And to me, in some ways, that kind of felt more important than worrying about the date that things change. So that's what I tried to go to in the chart. However, having said that, and ruminating on this today, and I'm still not talking about the chart, folks, but by policy, the chair is supposed to assign the committees. So if we're assigning them for 2 years, really only one chair every 2 years gets to do that. But we can suss that out a little bit later when we get there. I don't think it's a hill to die on by any means. The other things on my list, and I don't want to have a protracted discussion. I would prefer that we kind of start with a high-level general purpose procedure statement. But other things that have come up are, philosophically, do we want all board members to rotate through all committees? Do board members only serve on committees they're interested in? So those are some things that we may have a difference of opinion about, we may have to address, we may not. And then also two things. When we did talk about the possibility of 2-year assignments, even 1-year assignments, do we have, for lack of a better word, term limits, right? Yes, you can re-up, once or twice, whatever. I don't know. I don't have strong feelings. I'm just bringing forward issues that have come up. And then the other thing that has come up a little bit, just as chair, and those of you who have been chair have, maybe had this when we're doing committee assignment work, is, what do you do when you have, you have one committee and you have 3 people express interest in serving on it, and then how do you, it's kind of at the discretion of the chair. And so I think just that recognition that, and we've all done work like this, sometimes it just gets a little futzy trying to be all things to all people. I will leave it with that. So just wanted to point that out. Kathy, you have your hand up.
That was a no, sorry.
Okay. Kathy's in a new room of her house that I've never seen before, so I'm kind of wondering where she's at.
It's a provided Microsoft Teams background.
Oh, that's totally funny, because I just thought you were somewhere else in your house. Okay. Okay, anything else on procedures? Julie?
Oh, on procedures, no. Well, maybe. The only committee that's going to get messy is going to be the policy committee, depending on who is vice chair. That could affect the membership.
Right.
So just would like to throw that out there.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Thank you. Okay, so so this is my proposal then, looking at the purpose. I'm calling it the purpose procedure document. Julie and Melissa are going to work on the first part. Kathy's going to work on adding a sentence about the handoff. Other than that, I'm not hearing anything major, but of course, if you go home and, well, I guess you are all home. If you look at this later and say, well, this doesn't jive for me, or I don't understand this, please reach out. And then again, we will put this on our list of things to come back to the board and sign off of, along with everything else, with the committee descriptions. Okay. All right. Anything else? Going once, going twice? Got it? Okay. All right. Now everybody can look at the colorful one if they so desire, and I will try to explain how I tried to pull everything, all the thoughts in my head together. So what I was, you guys know that I'm visual. I'm a visual person, and so I was trying to make all these different iterations written down on pieces of paper, trying to figure out who had which committees and which committees needed which people, and how many people and how long people should be on them, and how to do the stair-stepping thing. And so finally I just put it this way. I realized that there were, I think, what did I figure, like 19 spots, for lack of a better word, that we need to fill each whatever portion of time. I originally started cutting these in half years because of this is an election year. So I actually started, Mark and Don and I, since we're up for election, we were the only ones that were colored in. And then I decided that it would just be easier to represent everybody in a color. And then I kind of tried to fill things in as best I could, and then sort of double check and make sure, looked at how many committees everybody had, and was it equitable? Does it need to be equitable? What did that look like? So what you see before you is sort of my brain dump based on the survey results I got back when people expressed interest in committees. And then you'll also see there's some shaded committees. One that has Don or Melissa just as a suggestion, but it sounds like what we've talked about with legislative. No, I take that back. I don't know if legislative committee needs 2 people or if it should be 3. I don't have an opinion, but since the other ones had 3, I put 3 in that one. Other shaded things are just suggestions of perhaps who could take that committee, knowing that, certainly Don, Mark, and I are, if we're not reelected, it would be that third, it would be the replacement seat. So kind of apologies for how I did this, but just looking for some feedback, pro, con, yes, no, hate it, love it, doesn't make any sense. Let's dig in. Okay, it's either so perfect that everybody's like, yeah, love it, or it's so terrible and everybody's like, I don't want to start. Looks like Kathy and then Melissa.
I had to put my glasses on because it's very small on the printed page. So, nope. No, I like the I like the transition and the blocking together of the work. I haven't really taken a look at whether, like I'm looking at the community curriculum committee, and it looks like there's a transition there at the end of a school year. So I think once we've established a pattern, we can't say now that it's right or wrong. You're absolutely right. But I think once we establish a pattern, we'll know whether we can transition a committee in the middle of a school year or not effectively. And I haven't gone through each committee to see, whether or not that's happened. But for example, I don't know much about the long range planning committee to see, can you serve on that from January, or can you serve on that from January to June and come in on it halfway in the school year? I don't know much about that.
Right. And some of those committees I would say are, are less important in terms of transition because there's other board members on them. And so that was where I was trying to get the stair step, right? Versus the community committees. Honestly, if I probably looked at those more in terms of school year. But again, it was just sort of my playing around with it. Looks like Melissa and then Julie.
I think it's great to have it laid out visually. I agree with you, to have the the visual for those of us who understand it better. If I were at some point going to be putting it together myself, I would find it helpful to also have the chair assignments, the things that chairs always are assigned to, just because it would help a little bit with the idea of balancing it so the chair doesn't get too much responsibility.
I agree. I agree. I didn't put them on here because I thought it gets confusing. And then when I started adding things up, then I was like, oh, but I already have, as chair, I have 2 additional committees. So
and because it's a beautiful piece of work and I expect it to be used for decades to come, maybe having a key at the bottom, because I don't know what P/F is. What's P/F?
Oh, parent-family engagement. Yeah,
oh, okay.
Or parent-family.
Gotcha.
I don't know if it's PF, parent-family. Is it engagement?
I'm always
involvement.
having the abbreviation so it doesn't get out of hand,
Yep.
but it just might be nice to have a key. Otherwise, I think it's beautiful. And I also wanted to just jump in here. I mean, I'm honestly and truly okay with anything that I'm assigned to. My first year, I was like, oh, please don't give me the insurance committee because I don't know anything about that. But, you know, honestly, I'm good with it. I'm good with anything. And I just wanted to reach out to my fellow board members. I had mentioned to Deborah that I wouldn't mind a heavier load of committee meetings because I feel like as a new board member, I really learn a lot from my participation on them and the rotation through them. So I would reach out to my fellow board members to say that if they find themselves in a position where they're overwhelmed with committees, I'd be happy to take on an extra committee or 2, and that I would really love the opportunity to substitute in when somebody isn't able to go for scheduling conflict reasons, that I would see this as an awesome opportunity to learn about some of the committees just to be able to attend even once. So
Thanks, Melissa. I'm coming to you, Julie, but I just want to share a couple other things that I was also trying to balance. When I looked at the board committees, so policy, long-range planning, community engagement, legislative, I was also trying to kind of balance those between us, right? So that somebody's not on all 4 of them, or the same people aren't on all this, 2 of them, or things like that. And so that just became an additional, not a challenge, but just something I was trying to look at in terms of balance. And then, there were a few committees that board members, gave me feedback that they can't attend either from time or interest. So, that is factored in here as well. And, we are fortunate that the board members that we have spent considerable amount of time on some of these committees outside their board work. So, for example, Melissa spent a lot of years working for Gateway. I don't know that you really need to be the board. I was trying not to put you as a board rep because you're already involved in the organization or have been. So,
well, it would be very difficult for some people, I think, to wear 2 hats. When I participate on some of these, I prefer to be free to be the advocate and not the board member. So, I mean, the school board representative. So I really appreciate that type of input as well. Perhaps that's something that could be added to our procedures document as a consideration.
Okay, say that again, please.
The procedures document, because it just occurred to me, if a school board member has a problem being the school board liaison because they would like to be free to work for the organization in a different role, perhaps that's input that could be taken.
Okay, so kind of like almost like a conflict of interest or conflict of...
Exactly. I mean, it's not really a conflict of interest because I think all these organizations work for the same purpose. We're all on the same team, but it just a blending of roles that would be difficult to balance.
Yep. Thanks. Okay, Julie, sorry, I'm getting to, I don't know if you were, your hand was like, it felt like your hand, like you were raising it, like you were so excited, and I wanted to get you in here, but I wanted to get those 2 things in, so.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I'm actually remembering what I was going to say. So okay, 2 things. First of all, and I think this would really, really be helpful. Either the chair can assign who's going to be the chair of each of these committees, or the committee itself can work it out. I mean, according to policy, the chair is supposed to do that. Because I think there needs to be a point person for each committee so that if somebody's going to be absent, everybody knows about it. And for the committees that have 2 or 3 people already, they probably don't need somebody to sub in for them, just in terms of making sure it's covered. But there are a couple committees, I think, where there's only one person on the committee. So, you know, those would be the more, I don't want to say more important, but, you know, they would need to be covered. They would need to be covered.
So kind of an if this, then sort of.
Right. You know, so if, yeah. Right. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks. Melissa?
I just wanted to echo that I think that's a great idea if it's, because sometimes you need a person to take the lead. I know on student school board this year, I mean, Jean was clearly an amazing organizer and administrator, and if I had to take the lead on that, I wouldn't have known what to do. So I think some of them would benefit from having a person designated as the chair or the lead board member, or especially for things like sending out materials, getting meetings scheduled. I think that would be really useful. And going back to a question you had asked before, I think the legislative committee would benefit from having 3 people on it. I think there's a lot of research to be done, a lot of homework to be done, and there's just a lot of work to go around when the legislature is in session or when issues come up.
Okay, thanks, Melissa. Oh, and I have full confidence that you can handle the insurance trust committee. I think your brain works that way. I think you handle those big concepts.
It is really exciting.
I think I get overwhelmed. When I was a new board member, I got overwhelmed with new concepts, and that was one of them. But I feel really good moving forward on it. So
thanks.
I actually really like it.
Just don't make me the clerk, because I'm going to forget to push the button.
Okay. Well,
still have nightmares about that. So
I live the nightmares. Okay, so let me see. Okay, I'm gonna step back and do some summarizing, because you know I like to do that. So I've heard adding to the chart the chair positions, a key, or the chair committees. Some, I got to see where my notes go. I have written down subbing. What the heck was were we talking about? Was there something else about subbing that wasn't in procedures?
That was me. Just that I think it wasn't for procedures. I think I just made the note that I would appreciate the opportunity.
Okay.
Somebody can't go.
Gotcha.
Was it when I was talking that you wrote that note down?
If possible.
Yeah, okay. just that I think it's a good opportunity for other board members.
Yep. So so we'll put that in there. So just as a note to everyone, if you can't make your committee, you're the only one going, please don't just skip it. Please put it out for asking someone to take it for you. Don't feel like that's a intrusion or asking too much, right? I think that's what we were going for with that. So I've heard Melissa, and I saw Julie shake her head, interest in having 3 people on the legislative committee. So as you can see in the chart, I don't know that we need to make a decision tonight necessarily. My suggestion was Don or Melissa, just kind of looking at the overall number of committees. And I'm also, if either one of you wants to speak strongly being for or against on that committee, that's fine. Or we could wait until we see the sort of charge statement of that committee, so you kind of know what you might be getting into before you way into it, that's fine as well. And
Hey, Deborah,
yes, sir.
I would actually be interested in that one as well, since I'm actually very involved in that aspect of a different nonprofit organization.
Okay.
And a side note, the July 21 through December 21,
Mm-hmm.
you gave me a vacation for that whole 6 months.
Which one is it? Hang on.
It's the
Okay.
center row.
The center row. Oh, look at that. Hang on, Mark.
Would be a
You
good
don't
time
want
to
a
take.
vacation?
Yeah, long one apparently.
Oh man, hang on, because I swear I had everybody written down on. Okay, pardon my paper ruffling. I'm gonna try and ruffle quietly. I know it's here somewhere. It's in a pile of paper, I swear. The audience must just think I'm a ding-a-ling. Okay. So.
I assure the audience that you're.
Yes, you're right, Mark. I have you. I think I kind of just. I think I ran out of steam. It's
I know
totally what
feeling.
happened. So yes, we will plug you back in there, Mark, somewhere. Probably not right this minute. Oh, okay.
No,
I don't know how I lost you. I think I took you off something and then I probably sunsetted you somewhere and then didn't get you back on something. So
I wouldn't mind bumping Don out of the first long range planning spot.
Okay.
I really like that committee.
I know you do, Mark, but
I like that committee too, but it never met when I was on it, so
yep.
I might fight you for it. I'd like to go to at least one meeting. So.
Actually, I don't know if I should. Well, see, I said that. Now I have to say it aloud. But we did discuss very briefly. Nobody chiseled it in stone, but that perhaps the long-range planning committee could work on some budget reduction thoughts. Not the thoughts themselves, processes. Budget reduction processes. Okay. So now everybody's going to go, oh, I want to be on that committee, right? Julie, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say the Long Range Planning Committee, in one of its earlier iterations, Deborah, I'm not sure if you were on the board then, but I think you were. It was also included a budget piece.
Right, which is why I think that we thought that would be a good place for something like that to live. Long-range planning pretty much got eaten up by the facilities task force work, which it's fine, but
right. And I was going to say, if you're talking about process for budget reduction, I would absolutely recommend that Melissa be on that because she's had a lot of experience with that already and has we've chatted a little bit and has some really great ideas about what we need to do and when we need to do it and just setting up that whole structure. So you go, Melissa.
I'm wondering if that wouldn't be a good ad hoc committee, actually. Just that we don't have to just now.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I think because they haven't done much other work, that I would absolutely agree if I thought that committee was really engaged otherwise, and that's something. I mean, we can revisit.
I can't hear anybody. Is it just me?
I was just thinking the same thing.
I can't hear anybody talking.
I heard Deborah say we can revisit, and then it cut off. Deborah, are you still with us?
I can hear Melissa.
Wendy, is Deborah still with us?
Something
Maybe
went wrong for Deborah. Sorry,
Okay,
something went wrong
yeah.
for Deborah, and she's trying to get back into the meeting.
Awesome.
Be patient, please.
Well, I'm glad it's not just me.
Now, in the absence of the chair, I wonder if this is an okay time to discuss a relatively unimportant issue about having a point person for each committee. Should that be board appointed or committee decided? What are you thinking?
Neither one, because in policy it says that the point person should be, or the chair of the committee would be, I suppose, the same thing as the point person. So the chair can either appoint that person, or I suggested about 10 minutes ago maybe that perhaps the committee might want to decide who its point person or chair of committee would be. For the policy committee, it's always the vice chair. So
right, okay. But for this group, you know, what our recommendation be? I mean, just as a discussion, what would we feel more comfortable with?
We should have that.
Okay.
In the situations where there's a senior member and a junior member intentionally, maybe it makes sense to have the senior member automatically be that person. But I would say an internal decision would probably choose the senior member as the point person. So maybe having it internally selected is a good way to go.
Okay.
Okay.
Welcome back, Deborah.
Thanks. I just realized as I heard you saying that was my other thing, that assigned chair. Was that what you were discussing?
Yeah, for each committee.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Somebody write that up and tell me what you said. Okay.
Yeah. The discussion was, one way or the other.
Okay. Got it.
There have been a few people that saying maybe, you know, an internal decision might be easier, more effective, efficient.
Okay. Okay. Then the other things I wanted to point out, on this chart is, as you can see, AMSD just has Julie there for the next 2 periods. AMSD I don't feel super comfortable assigning much further out than that because it is such a very specific time frame committee. I mean, unless somebody really says, yeah, I'll take it next year, I'm willing to get up at the crack of dawn and drive to the cities. I did not want to assume that was a committee that just anybody could make. So that is why that committee is left off there. So any other questions? Yes, Melissa, you're huge on my screen, so you go.
I'm the only one leaving my camera on, I think. So AMSD, which I've never had the pleasure of serving in that capacity, is just attending a meeting?
Yes. So
is there any reason that couldn't be 2 people?
No. So it kind of varies between districts. Some districts, the designee is the chair, and then, you know, it's the chair and another person attend. AMSD is really, I think it's open to all of us. And obviously you came to the one conference or day of thing. I don't know how many of us were on the online conference this year. So it kind of varies between districts, and, you know, Julie can attest to this when I stop talking and let her talk, that, you know, some districts have a few people there, some have one. It just really depends. Go ahead, Julie.
Yeah, I think I still do it a couple different ways because I'm not a crack of dawn person, and so I end up going up Thursday night, which ends up costing the district something. Is I always look at the agenda ahead of time to see, is there anything that really is pertinent to Rochester that I'd like to be able to attend and ask questions if necessary, or chat briefly with Scott afterwards about. So honestly, I love the virtual meetings because, I mean, it's perfect. You don't have to get up early, and you don't have to go anywhere, and it's you know, it's cost free for the district. So Yeah, and I would say, you know, the AMSD also really ties in with the legislative committee or the legislative piece, because we do get, is everybody on their email list? Does everybody get those updates from AMSD? If not, I'm be happy to send them out as to what's on the table for any particular time. I mean, a lot of issues are the same as they are generally for MSBA. There's a lot of overlap, and I think probably also for the superintendent organization as well. We share a lot of the same issues moving forward and recommendations to the legislature and that kind of thing. They also have some very interesting speakers too.
So other than the expense of the travel and the overnight, if the person chooses to do that, there isn't a per meeting attendance fee, so that if somebody wanted to come along with you just for fun, assuming they're not going to charge the expense account on it, they could do that. Yep. But I'm also thinking new school board members, as you know, now having a year and a half under my belt, I think it would be awesome for any new school board members in the future to have a turn attending one just to learn what it is.
Right. Oh, and school board members are welcome at any time. It's not limited to just one. I mean, we pay dues to AMSD, and that includes all of the meetings except, I don't know if there's a fee for the conference, the half-day conference or not. I think there is, but otherwise it's no additional cost to the district for that. And you know, I'm always happy. I think I've asked Wendy any number of times, Wendy, is anybody else going up on Friday morning for this? It's the first Friday of the month, and if somebody else is going, it's kind of like, okay, I'll go up early so I don't have to drive, because you do not want me on the road at 5:30 in the morning behind the wheel of a car.
Thank you. Thank you for the benefit of public safety.
You bet.
That answers my questions about AMSD. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Anything else that somebody's seen on this chart other than, again, I'm trying to recap. I lost Mark somewhere in there. Sorry, Mark. Mark has expressed interest in a couple other spots, so I'll take a look at that and see where I can get him back in.
Let's just work on that offline, Deborah.
What?
Let's just work on that maybe tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. I'm just asking if there's anything else that I need to add to this, or anything else people want to express. Melissa? Put her hand up.
It's just me and my hand problem.
Just you and your hand. Okay. All right. Okay. So is it okay with everybody? Do I have consensus that this is an okay format? I should go ahead and update it a little bit and send it back out, and then we can just kind of move forward with this plan until we hate this plan and somebody wants to change it. Is that good enough for this evening?
Sounds good.
Okay, thanks.
Very good. I think it's a good format and good organization.
Okay.
And thank you, Deborah, for wading through, I'm sure, some very confusing survey responses, including mine.
I did figure yours out after a while, Kathy, but I did a little brain melding and I got it together. So, but and thanks to all of you. So I believe we have some assignments going forward. I think that's a good thing. So we know it is the end of July. We have 2 meetings in August and a study session in August already, and a meeting the 1st of September. Kathy, your hand is up. Do you have something else?
I do. As you speak of our study sessions coming up, I know that we've gotten some indication of what topics are what in some of the updates, but is it possible for you to send us a comprehensive list, even if it's potential topics, just so we know?
It is. Jean, your friend Jean, has taken that on this week. I just need to, I think just Wendy, Mike, and I just need to confirm that that's what was talked about, and then they'll have, that should be out later this week. So thanks for bringing that up, and much thanks for Jean to solidifying what was on scraps of pieces of paper all over my desk.
Well, it was a group effort, and everything in the parking lot has been unparked for reparked or, anyway, it's all on there.
We're on the parkway instead of the parking lot now.
Oh, that was good. That was
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah, that's impressive. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So I think I'm going to let us go for the evening. Thanks for the hard work that you've done in preparation of this meeting. Thanks for the hard work you're going to do after this meeting. Thanks to, I see John and Superintendent for hanging in there with us, and Wendy, of course. She doesn't have much of a choice, but John does. Hi, John. Thanks for being here, John.
Thanks.
I will extend. I'm taking my point of personal privilege, and I see two more hands. But I miss everyone. I got to see a few cabinet members today because I came in as they were kind of leaving the building, and we talk about relationships with our kids and teachers and kids, and I sure miss the times we have to chat with cabinet before and after our meetings, and of course you all as well. So. Just sending that appreciation. Julie, and then Kathy.
Yeah, I would just really like to express my appreciation to you, Deborah, for putting all this together. I mean, it's kind of like herding squirrels with all these assignments and trying to keep everybody happy and all of that. I know it was a tremendous amount of work. At times it was probably a huge headache for you. So I know you put in hours and hours and hours with your board chair work, and it's very much appreciated, and I'm fine with my committee assignments, and so you don't have to worry about hearing anything from me.
Thanks. You will see all my hair is still intact. Kathy?
Is it more gray? You have gray in it. I mean,
not too bad.
Not much. I will second what Director Workman said. I am also happy with my committee assignments, and since you said that the superintendent was still here, I'm wondering, my email buzzed during the meeting about the information that was sent out to the world about our plans for the fall, and I'm wondering if he wants to take the opportunity to announce the event on Thursday night.
Sure, we are going to host the town hall meeting to take any questions or feedback on the plans that was sent out today to parents, and then later this week we have a little bit different version that will be going out to staffs, but Thursday I do believe it's scheduled for 5:30 to 6:30, and we will be putting out the link for that here sometime tomorrow, I do believe.
Is that Thursday in 2 days? Thursday in 2 days. Okay, yeah. Thanks.
So thanks for bringing that to our attention. Thanks for setting that up, Mike, and because I'm just that punchy at the end of the evening. Now think about what we talked about earlier. What kind of event is this? Are we informing? Are we engaging? What is our promise to the public? So let's put what we've, I ask us to put what we've learned tonight into practice, and appreciate getting our stakeholders involved in our planning. This is, as I said to Mike recently, there was no book. There was no chapter in the superintendent's handbook about how to handle a pandemic and distance learning. So appreciation for all the work that you've done in conjunction with cabinet and every staff in the district. So thanks so much. All right. Well, I'm going to say good night, folks, and see you soon. Stay safe, stay masked up, and I will call this meeting adjourned at 7:57. Thanks.